So I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the town meeting for the town of Lunenburg, the annual town meeting. Today, I believe, is the 6th of May in 2023. As I just mentioned, we do have a quorum, which in our town is 50. The warrant has been properly served and has been returned to the clerk's office. Please stand now and join me in the recitation of the American Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. As I always do at the beginning of the meetings, I really want to thank all the people that are volunteers in this town, whether they're appointed to committees or whether they've been elected. They work tirelessly to help us keep this town as wonderful as it is. If you'd like to take a chance to join in some of the work that's being done, and I would encourage you to do so. There are openings on the committees. Committees are being reappointed again this year. There are talent bank forms that are available on the website. They're available at Town Hall, up at the town manager's office, and I would encourage you to fill them out and find an opportunity to join us. We also have an awful lot of town employees, cherished people who've worked for our town for many, many years. When Mr. Rogers, who I don't see yet today, was active here at town meeting, he would always bring a list of all the hours that people had worked in the town and how many employees. We do have a very special employee that is here with us today and has been with us for all of the meetings that I've been at for many, many years. And I'd like to turn it over now to our town manager, Heather Lemieux, for some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming today. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to say a few thank yous. Thank you to our Finance Committee for all the hours they have spent over the last year in the budget process and their thoughtful questions asked to determine what's the best financial decisions for the town. Thank you to the Select Board, all the different boards and commissions, the Finance Director, and the other department heads and staff. They're all part of the budget development process and the articles you will hear about today and vote on. Thank you to the Public Access and our IT people, Suzer IT and Dan, and the school facility staff for help setting up today, and Public Access for all the work that they did to get ready for today's meeting. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge all the staff here today. I want to call out one person in particular, our Finance Director, Karen Brochu. This is Karen's last town meeting as Lunenburg's Finance Director, as she is retiring after 38 years. Thank you, Karen, for being a true professional, for being the very best at your job, but also being fun to work with. We wish you the very best in the next chapter of your life and hope you still stop in at 17 Main Street.
Karen, did you want to make a speech? Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to the residents and to the town's leadership. It's been my honor and privilege to work for the town over the last 38 years. I'll miss everyone, but it's time for me to move on and do some other things with my life, but I've enjoyed every moment here. Thank you all.
You know, Karen, I'm of that age when people are retiring, and I'm going to tell you that most everybody goes back to work in some capacity, myself included and most of my friends. By now, you've all been given a clicker. This is how we do our voting now. We don't do our hands and we don't do yelling. We use the clicker. The purpose is to accurately reflect the vote of the body. For many reasons, some voters may not want to participate by showing their hands to oppose an article or to support an article and would feel more comfortable voting privately and anonymously. It'll also save time if we have hand counts. Once the debate and discussion has ended, I will declare it's time to vote. I'll say something to the effect of it's time to vote, or voting is now open, and you may use your clickers to favor or support a particular article. At the same time, you vote in favor or opposed. We don't wait for the yays and then wait for the nays. It's all done at the same time. And your clicker will display a yay or a nay or an okay that you have voted. It will tell you that the vote was sent and received. If for some reason you say, oh my goodness, I did it wrong, as long as the voting is still open, just hit the button that you wanted to put the first time, and it will change it automatically to the one that you wanted, okay? There's no line of sight. It's not like your television that it has to be pointed in the right direction. It will pick up your signal. So there's also no sharing of clickers, so you can't say, I don't know what to do. Let me give it to my neighbor or my friend or whatever that's sitting near you. There may still be times that I'll ask for a showing of hands, so keep your clicker around and keep your hands around, okay? You must be present in the room in order to be able to vote, and the clicker must be returned to the ladies outside when the voting is completed. So we're going to demonstrate that your clickers are working, just to make sure everybody's is. So Kathy has pre-programmed a question out there somewhere. The gentleman who's helping us is going to pre-program the question that's out there. I'll do a little soft shoe while we're waiting. It texted fine yesterday. Test your clickers. Oh, by the way, the clicker is not particularly programmed to any particular individual, so it's not like anybody could go back later and say, well, how did Tim Murphy vote on that article? Okay, so everybody's just clicking. Well, that's okay. So here's the question. You don't know what your answer is yet. You're clicking to see if it works. So here's the question. It's not on your screen, is it? No, it's not on your screen. So here's the question. Vote yes or yay if you watched anything to do with the coronation in England, King Charles today. All those people vote yay, and all the people who didn't watch a damn thing can say nay, and go vote now, and let's see how many people watched some of the coronation this morning. Go. Voting is now open. Did you watch the coronation? Got 20, 30, 40, yep. This is just telling us how many people are voting. Of course, you're not required to vote on each and every issue. Maybe you don't, whatever. Okay. So let's say voting is now closed. Kathy, tell us the results. How many people watched the coronation? And the results are 23 people got up and watched something. 37 people said, to heck with it, I don't care. And a total of 60 people voted. If your clicker didn't work, you got to raise your hand, let us know. Somebody will bring you a new clicker. Did you get any type of display on your clicker? I've forgotten what it does. Says okay. Says okay on your clicker. Lights up.
It should be the number, right? It should be the number.
All right. So, you got it? Everybody have something show up on their clicker to indicate that it worked? No? Ms. Hatch, nothing works on yours? Everybody got it? Everybody seen it? We'll get better at this. It's only the third time we've done it. Okay. You want another question? All right, let's do another question. Are the Celtics going to win the NBA championship? So erase this one. Are the Celtics going to win the NBA championship? This is the last question we're going to do because I'd like to get out of this meeting sometime today. Okay. Can you wipe out those results, please? Okay. Here we go. Are the Celtics going to win the NBA championship? Voting is now open. Please say yes if you think they will, and no if you're pessimistic. Okay, let's assume everybody is done. Voting is now closed. Can we have the results? How many people are optimistic? All right. Well over half believe that the Celtics will win the championship. 28 people are old Red Sox fans that are certain that they won't and that they'll crash and burn again. Did everybody's clicker work? If your clicker didn't work, you got to raise your hand and somebody will bring you a new one. Good. I don't see any hands. Let's move along. This is an open meeting. If a board or a committee has deferred their vote, I will ask them to discuss that matter at their microphones and take a roll so that the vote can be documented and you'll know where each of those people stands. The charter directs that I appoint a deputy moderator, so with your approval, somebody can serve in my absence if I am unable. Rob Bowen has served in that capacity as my lady-in-waiting, which is appropriate for the coronations today. He served as my lady-in-waiting capacity for several years, and unless I hear an objection, I will again appoint him to be my deputy. I don't hear any objections, so I will move along. I'm going to go over the ground rules for the meeting. Many of you know that. Turn off your noisemakers, your cell phones, your beepers. That includes any verbal noisemakers that are inappropriate for a civil debate, and by that I mean no booing, no hissing, hooting, hollering, etc. Those who wish to speak should line up at the microphones. State your name, state your street address. I'll try to get to everybody in order, but I may take the select board or the finance committee, etc., out of order if that makes sense. If you have a physical limitation, someone can bring that microphone to you. The only time someone can stand and address the meeting without going to the microphone is for what's called a point of order. Issue, procedural error, etc., something significant. All amendments, questions, and discussions are to me, and I will seek an answer for you from the moving party, select boards, etc. When speaking, please don't refer to individuals by their name. Instead, refer to them as the moving party, the previous speaker, the member of the select board, etc., and so on. The moving party will first be allowed to speak and have adequate. Speaking thereafter, you should be brief. Anyone other than the moving party wishing to speak a second time should be very brief. And I will ask them to step aside if there's somebody behind them who's not had a chance to speak at all. Proposed amendments to articles, more than simple word changes, need to be in writing. There are forms at the microphones. Any amendments need to be within the scope of the original article. Moving the question, cutting off debate, must be at the microphone, must be seconded, and is not debatable. That stops the discussion. It takes a 2/3 vote, but I will rule it out of order if I feel that there's still a lot of people who are trying to speak on a particular article. Motion for reconsideration of a previous vote requires a majority, and it can be required regardless of whether business according to Mass General Law follows the procedures that are set out in town meeting time. It's similar to Robert's Rules of Order. Those wishing to accomplish something and are unsure about the procedure, they can reach out to Heather's office, they can reach out to me, I'll assist you at the meetings. The procedures that we use are designed to promote a fair debate, not to exclude anybody just because you're new to the process. Meetings have had citizen petitions on the warrant, and the New England Town Meeting is the best form of government for individual citizens. It's the purest form of democracy. So we're going to begin the meeting, as we often do, with the consent calendar. I believe there would have been a handout with the consent calendar when you came in. I hope. No? there a consent calendar handout, Heather? No. Okay. So I will read out for you the articles that are on the consent calendar. The consent calendar is a series of warrant articles that myself and the town officials have met and discussed that are relatively non-controversial in their subject matter and could be voted on together in one motion that might expedite the business of this town meeting. If the article passes, then we'll go on to the rest of the articles in their usual order. As I read off each one of the articles, and you can follow in your warrant, if there's something that you don't want to vote in the consent calendar, something that you want to ask a question or debate, then you can just say hold when I read out that particular article number, and then we'll take it back in its usual order in the warrant. So I move that the town advance for consideration Articles 1, 2, 3,
Hold.
10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Like half the warrant. Okay. And then take up discussion and vote at the end after I've read through all of them. So Article 1, the town to pass over regular written reports that have already been accepted. Article 2, reauthorize revolving funds, which are found on page 8, for certain town departments, boards, committees, agencies, or officers for the spending limits printed in the annual town meeting. Article 3, that the town vote to transfer the sum of $4,000 from free cash for payment of prior year expenses.
Hold.
Hold. So Article 3 will go back into the regular calendar. Article 10, to vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $100,000 to the Stabilization Fund. Article 11, that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $250,000 to the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. Hold on 11. Article 12, that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $282,855 and transfer from sewer retained earnings the sum of $1,000 to, I'll finish reading it, but then it'll hold it, to the OPEB, Other Post-Employment Benefits Fund, established in 2010. That's a hold again on 12. Article 15, that the town vote to transfer from sewer enterprise retained earnings $36,621.37 into the sewer capital reserve stabilization fund. That the town vote to appropriate from solid waste disposal enterprise revenues the sum of $302,000 to operate the solid waste disposal program. That's Article 16. Article 17, that the town vote to appropriate from the water enterprise revenues the sum of $25,000 to operate the water district for fiscal year 24. Article 18, that the town vote to appropriate from PEG access and cable-related revenues $163,261 to fund the operating and capital budgets of PEG for 2024, and further that $47,503 be included in appropriations from the general fund for indirect costs and allocated to PEG, the related enterprise fund. Article 19, that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $10,000 from the sale of cemetery lots to be used for the care and improvement and embellishment of the town's cemeteries. And Article 20, that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $25,000 for consultant services to complete a survey program to inventory historic homes within the town. So I have holds on Articles 3, 11, and 12. At this point in time, none other being, and those are just being held. All the other articles with your vote would be accepted and passed. So I'd ask for a voice vote for everything except Article 3, 11, and 12, and it would call for a majority vote.
Mr. Moderator,
Oh, yes, Adam.
I apologize for interrupting, Mr. Moderator. Just for clarification, Article 17 is to fund the water department and not the water district, correct?
Which did I say?
I believe you stated district. I just want to be
Oh,
sure it's clear
water
for
department.
purposes of the
My
vote.
mistake. Yeah, Water Department is a separate entity. There are very few houses that are serviced by the town water department. Correct? Right. Everybody clear on that? Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to call for a voice vote. All those other articles did not get held. All those in favor, please just call out by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll now move on to Article 3 for Mr. Franco.
I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $4,000 from free cash for payment of prior year expenses.
There's a second. Select Board, your recommendation,
Select Board recommended approval.
and Finance Committee.
Finance Committee deferred.
Finance Committee deferred. So at this point in time, you need to caucus and discuss at your microphones your recommendation on paying of prior year expenses.
I would entertain any discussion on Article 3 if there is any.
So I can't hear you very well. How's everybody else doing?
No? How about this? Is this better? Okay. If there's no discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to recommend approval of Article 3.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Mr. Nizzolo. Aye. Mr. Gray.
Aye.
Mr. Bailish. Aye. Mr. Simeoni.
Aye.
Mr. Menard.
Aye.
And an aye from myself. Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, all those, anyone want to discuss or debate Article 4 at this time? No one at the microphone. I'll declare we're ready to vote.
There's 6 of us.
Six of us.
Article 3, thank you. I am tired this morning. Article 3, for paying prior year expenses, because it's prior year expenses, requires a 4/5 vote. So Kathy, are we ready on Article 3? Thank you. So voting is now open. All those in favor and opposed can vote now. You vote at the same time, yes or no, all at the same time. Okay, voting is now closed. What are the results, Kathy, of Article 3? 99 to 4 out of 103, more than 4/5. The article passes. Article 4 now, Ms. Soroka.
I move that the town vote to transfer from line number 5, workers' compensation, the sum of $25,377.77. Transfer from number 29, technology department, the sum of $14,229.73. Transfer from line number 13, reserve fund, the sum of $75,000. Transfer from line number 40, police lockup, the sum of $33,184.96. Transfer from line number 41, injury leave, the sum of $4,000. Transfer from line 46, radio watch, the sum of $15,853.80. Transfer from line number 75, veterans benefits, the sum of $30,000, $30,922.80. And transfer from line number 73, recycling program, the sum of $38,046. Transfer to line number 6, health insurance, the sum of $63,576.68. Transfer to line number 70, snow removal, the sum of $96,991.92, all to amend the amounts voted under Article 8 of the May 7th, 2022 annual town meeting and Article 1 of the November 15, 2022 special town meeting.
There's a second. Select Board, your recommendation.
was 4-0 to approve, and
Thank-
Finance Committee was 5-0 to approve.
Okay, Finance Committee, your recommendation?
Finance,
Oh, sorry.
Finance
Okay.
Committee recommends approval.
Stepped on my line.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Not a problem. Okay, tell us about the article, Ms. Soroka.
It is to adjust the budget so that we can pay shortages on the health insurance and snow removal with the excess in the other selected items.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Passios, you're going to be our first guest today. You told me you weren't even sure you were going to speak. Go ahead, tell us who you are, where you live.
Yeah, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street, Lunenburg.
Is that microphone on? Nope.
Get close.
The red light came on.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah,
Just took
okay.
a second to connect. Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I just want to make the comment that there's been calls over the years to substantially increase the line item dollar amount for the snow removal. As we see here and in almost every year that I can think back, there have always been dollar amounts available for line item transfer to cover this deficit. It calls up two things. Number one, if we're going to budget the way we have been very conservatively on the line items, then my feeling is we leave the snow removal account alone other than increasing maybe small amounts because of inflation. It also calls out that we do budget very conservatively and we have money sitting on the table in many line items, but you're not guaranteed that those monies are going to be there every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll declare that we're ready to vote. Voting is now open on Article 4. If you're in favor of the article, you'll say yay. If you're opposed, you'll say nay. Voting is now open. God bless. Okay, voting is now closed. Kathy, what are the results? 100 in favor, 6 opposed, more than passes, and I declare so. Article 5, Mr. Jeffries.
I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $1,500,000 to the overlay account for all anticipated costs associated with fiscal year 2023 abatements.
Second.
Second. Select Board, your recommendation?
Select Board recommends approval 4-0.
And Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends approval 4-0 to 1.
Thank you. You want to tell us about the article, Mr. Jeffries?
Sure. I think we're all aware of the fact that the Board of Assessors is undergoing a significant amount of abatements this year. What this is looking at the total amount of money that was applied to Index 1 that resulted in property valuation increases and tax increases. It's setting aside the equivalent value of that increase so that as the Board of Assessors works and conducts abatements, that there's adequate funding to cover the cost of those abatements.
Thank you. Mr. Passios. Before we begin, Mr. Passios, thank you. I just want to say, if you look at the article and look at it carefully, you know, one of the things about articles is always that our discussion, our amendments, our debate has to be within the scope. So this article is fairly narrow. It talks about an amount of money coming from a certain pot to go to a certain place. This is not the time for any of us to get into it. Has already been a lengthy discussion about what happened in town, about taxes and abatements, et cetera, and so on. So please limit your discussions to the amount of money, where it's coming from, and where it's going. Thank you. You're first.
Again, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. The amount is my concern. This body is about to commit $1.5 million to an account that is under the control of 3 elected officials. I have no problem with elected officials, appointed officials, so on and so forth. But I am concerned that And I missed the last round. I hear that new information is out that's more accurate, telling us what our potential exposure is for this money. So I'm wondering if there is really a need for $1.5 million. I personally feel the number is too high. Also, the money, once it goes into this account, cannot be moved back out of this account by town meeting or anybody else in town government except the assessors. The only recourse that the town has going forward, if we don't use that money and the assessors do not release the money as unneeded funds, is to not fund that line item for the next 2 or 3 years until it's spent down. Just clarification of information as to where this money's going and how it's going to flow through the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Jeffries, Ms. Lemieux. Ms. Lemieux, go ahead.
I think it would be helpful if I go through a couple slides I prepared and could answer some questions before.
Excellent. How about some slides?
Okay, thank you. So as this slide depicts, the articles to transfer funding for the fiscal 23 tax abatements from free cash to the overlay account. And the overlay account covers anticipated property tax abatements, exemptions, interest related to the abatements, pending appellate tax board cases, and uncollected taxes in the fiscal year. We received a total of 440 abatement applications. 410 of those were lakefront, and 30 were non-lakefront properties. To estimate what would be needed in the overlay account to cover the worst-case scenario or maximum impact if all abatement applications were approved, and the estimated interest owed to taxpayers for overpayment of taxes, calculations were done 2 different ways. By taking pending abatement applications, their opinion of value amounts, and calculating the difference in actual fiscal 23 tax amounts versus the opinion of value. Secondly, by backing out the increase on land values to lakefront properties. The total calculated impact using both methods was approximately $1.7 million. The current balance in the overlay account is $257,769. Due to pending ATB cases and pending exemptions related to the fiscal 23 abatements, not related, I'm sorry, an estimated $200,000 from the current balance of the overlay can be allocated towards the fiscal 23 abatement applications. This article is asking to fund the balance needed for the maximum impact, less the amount already available in the overlay account, for a total of $1.5 million. And the recommendation is to come from free cash. To answer the previous speaker's question,
yes, please.
I do believe we should retain this amount as our estimate. The assessors have not gone through all the applications, even though the report has been submitted, so that action still needs to take place. Also, if anyone appeals to the ATB, that could be months out, and then there's those associated abatement amounts and any interest too.
Ms. Lemieux, I think Mr. Passio's question is about what happens to the money that's in the overlay that's not used.
That is correct. The assessors have to release the overlay, any excess overlay balance. So once those amounts are known, town administration would ask them to release that amount. And after they release that amount, it can be reappropriated at a future town meeting.
Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to voice my support for the town manager's number and the calculations that she used, that she just presented. Given the enormity and the severity of the problem, and we're in uncharted territories, I think it would be wise to have the maximum amount available. I also trust our elected officials in the Board of Assessors that if the amount remaining is an exorbitant amount, in excess of the 200+ thousand they already have, that they would do the right thing and restore it back to the town. If not, they would keep it. The town doesn't lose it. They would just keep it. And as the previous speaker said, one of the previous speakers said, we could just not fund it until they reduce that amount over a few years. So the money isn't lost by any regard, but I think they would do the right thing anyway if a huge amount of money was left at the end of the abatement process. So I support the $1.5 million.
Anyone else? I think she's just walking over to talk to Debbie, but not up at the microphone. Okay. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised or at the microphone, so I declare we're ready to vote. This is Article 5, transfer from free cash 1.5 to the overlay account, anticipated cost for the abatements. Voting is now open. Obviously, you're voting. You may vote now. That seems to be about everybody. All those in favor of Article 5? Wait, still creeping up. Okay. I think that's everybody. All those in favor of Article 5, how many yeses, Kathy? 98 in favor, 12 opposed. Passes by more than a majority. Article 5 is passed. Article 6, Mr. Alonso, the capital plan. This is in your booklet on pages 4 and 5 if you're following along at home.
I move the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $556,789.09, transfer from free cash the sum of $467,268.98, transfer from Article 14 of the May 2nd, 2015 annual town meeting the sum of $8,800.26, transfer from Article 14 of the May 7th, 2016 annual town meeting the sum of $5,117.67, transfer from Article 6 of the May 4th, 2019 annual town meeting the sum of $1,034 for a total appropriation of $1,039,010 to fund the FY24 capital plan as appearing in the May 6, 2023 annual town meeting warrant booklet.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Select Board?
Select Board recommends approval, 4-0.
Thank you. Finance?
Finance Committee recommends approval.
Okay, my notes say Town Manager is going to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Capital Planning Committee's first meeting for the fiscal 24 capital meeting planning process was on August 3rd. The capital planning documents were sent to departments in September, and the Capital Planning Committee met with departments from late October until the end of November. This year, I transitioned the forms to the same software we use for our budgeting software, ClearGov, and all the relevant information was submitted by departments through this platform. The data collected is based on the UMass Collins Center capital planning documents that include various categories, such as effectiveness of government, the effect on the operating costs, effect on revenues, whether the project is mandated by state or federal government, whether grant funds are available, how the project contributes to such things as economic growth, public safety, public health, and education. Each category receives a rating and overall score based on the aggregate score of all the categories. The higher the rating, the higher the priority. The Capital Planning Committee evaluates capital requests based on the responses to these categories, and as a group, the Capital Planning Committee reviews the merits of all the projects. Each member submits the ranking of each project, and these are averaged to receive a composite score. The Capital Planning Committee received 29 capital project requests for fiscal 24. One project at that time was removed, and the committee ultimately ranked 27 items. The prioritized list was provided to me on December 28th. On January 28th, I presented a recommendation to fund 6 projects to be funded through a combination of tax revenue, unexpended capital, and the special purpose stabilization account, totaling $1,360,500. My recommendation at that time was to reserve all of the certified free cash until we had a clearer picture of how much should be carried in the overlay account for abatements that would need to be appropriated at today's town meeting. On February 21st, the Select Board voted to use American Rescue Plan Act funds to purchase 3 of the vehicles in the fiscal 24 capital plan: a replacement ambulance for the fire department and 2 6-wheel dump trucks for the DPW, totaling $986,000. The expenditure of American Rescue Plan funds is made by the Select Board and does not require a town meeting vote. The decision by the Select Board to use ARPA funds for these 3 items was predicated on the fact that providing the funding as soon as possible would accelerate ordering vehicles that were seeing significant delays due to supply chain issues. This eliminated the use of special purpose stabilization funds for these 3 items. On March 28th, I presented a revised capital plan recommendation that included an additional 6 projects. My revised recommendation eliminated the use of $986,000 from the special purpose stabilization account, added $467,268.98 from free cash, added $356,789 from tax revenues, and reduced the amount from unexpended capital by $2,758.98. The revised recommendation also removed 2 projects from the fiscal '24 list of capital projects after consulting the new facilities director and a determination that they would not be needed. Today, you are being asked to raise and appropriate $556,789.09, transfer $467,268.98 from free cash, and transfer $14,951.93 from unexpended capital for 9 items on the capital plan. Priority number 2 is the Turkey Hill Elementary School exterior door upgrades and replacement for $160,000. This request is for the installation of a new vestibule that will require visitors to be buzzed in through 2 sets of doors to create enhanced, more reliable security. The door replacement must be done before any upgrades to access controls. The current doors are over their reasonable lifespan. The project will reduce liabilities and threats, adds and expands customer service, and contributes to public safety and aesthetics. Priority number 3 is for the Turkey Hill security upgrades for $131,000. This request is to upgrade door access controls and alarm keypad to match the Lunenburg middle school, high school system. This will eliminate passcodes and replace them with access cards. Additional security cameras will be installed at all exterior doors, other interior areas, and the playground. It also includes additional motion detectors. This equipment is at its reasonable lifespan. The project increases effectiveness and efficiencies, reduces potential liabilities and threats, adds and expands customer service, and contributes to education and public safety. Priority number 4 is for the primary school security upgrades for $83,500. This request is to upgrade door access controls and alarm keypad to match the Lunenburg Middle High School. This will eliminate passcodes and replace them with access cards. Additional security cameras will be installed at all exterior doors and other interior areas in the playground, and it also includes additional motion detectors. This equipment is at its reasonable lifespan. The project increases effectiveness and efficiencies, reduces potential liabilities and threats, adds and expands customer service, and contributes to education and public safety. Priority number 7 is for the Turkey Hill Elementary fire alarm upgrade for $287,000. The current fire alarm system is original to the building, and the project would upgrade the system to be in compliance with current code and reduce the risk of system failure due to its age. The upgrade will include new smoke detectors, add additional smoke detectors throughout the building, upgrade and add fire alarm pull stations, and includes a new fire alarm panel and system with panel interface screen. The system is over its reasonable lifespan. Replacement will reduce potential liabilities and threats, decrease costs if replaced, and would contribute to public safety. Priority number 8 is for the public safety radio system, phase 1, for $242,510. The current repeater receiver system is over 12 years old. The manufacturer considers the equipment obsolete and is discontinuing production of replacement parts. Phase 1 of the project is to replace both primary repeaters, replace 2 receiver sites with simulcast repeaters, and add an additional simulcast repeater to the system. This would not only improve system reliability, but will also improve radio communications in several dead spots in town. The system also has the capability to add additional simulcast sites in future years to continue to improve coverage in other areas of town. The system is over the reasonable lifespan, will increase effectiveness and efficiencies for public safety. Replacement will reduce potential liabilities and threats, will decrease costs, expand customer service, and contribute to public safety and public health. Priority number 9 is for the Northfield Road culvert at Kelly's Pond for survey, design, and permit work for $25,000. Capital funds are needed to hire a professional consultant to provide field survey for a severely deteriorated culvert on Northfield Road at Kelly's Pond. The project would also include engineered construction plans and specifications and cost to complete all the necessary permits. This culvert is over its reasonable lifespan, increase effectiveness efficiencies for the DPW, replacement will reduce potential liabilities, decrease operating costs, and would contribute to public safety and environmental sustainability. Priority number 10 is for a new half-ton DPW crew cab pickup for $55,000. Capital funds will be used to purchase a new half-ton crew cab pickup that will be a new addition to the fleet. The 2012 F-250 in the picture is a truck currently assigned to the DPW Highway Superintendent. The new vehicle would be assigned to the DPW Director. The truck that the Director drives would be assigned to the DPW Highway Superintendent, and the 2012 truck will be assigned to the town mechanic so that he can respond to off-site breakdowns, pick up parts, snow removal around the DPW, and would be a backup for snow removal as well. This vehicle would increase effectiveness and efficiencies for the DPW, reduce potential liabilities, decrease operating costs, and would contribute to public safety. Priority number 11 is the TC Passios sidewalk repairs in the Vertex Report number 4 for $25,000. This project was identified in the property condition assessment to repair and replace sections of 1,700 square feet of asphalt sidewalk around the TC Passios, which is currently used by people of all ages and abilities. These sidewalks are over their reasonable lifespan. Replacement will reduce potential liabilities, improve customer service, and will contribute to public safety. Priority number 12 is for the Whalum Lake Town Beach Marshall Pond treatment for $30,000. Capital funds will be used for the initial phase of the treatment to the Whalum Lake around Town Beach and Marshall Pond for weed control treatment program. This phase would include hydro raking at the town beach, treatments after hydro raking at the town beach, and the treatment assessments for Marshall Pond. Swimming at the town beach would only need to be restricted to a half day when treating the water. This project would increase effectiveness and efficiencies. Replacement will reduce potential liabilities, improve customer service, increase revenues, and would contribute to the cultural and recreational opportunities, aesthetics, environmental sustainability, and contribute to the well-being of the community. Since the ambulance and the 2 DPW trucks were funded by ARPA funds, today's vote is to fund the remaining 9 projects totaling $1,039,010, of which $556,789.09 is from tax revenue, $467,268.98 is from free cash, and $14,951.93 is from unexpended capital.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I'm going to call on this gentleman over here. Let's mix it up a little, you know? Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, good. My name is Peter Beardmore, 282 Pleasant Street. I'm a member of the school committee and a member of the capital planning committee, and I stand before you today speaking solely for myself. I'm voting for this capital plan this morning because the overwhelming majority of the items on the capital plan we absolutely need. Particularly the school department items that are on this capital plan were put there after assessments that came immediately following the Uvalde school massacre last May. And these address some, not all, but some of the recommendations that were made by the police chief and the safety committee that the school department has. That's the good news. The bad news is that this capital plan is underfunded. It's underfunded as a result of Article 4, where we took a substantial amount of funds and put them to the overlay account, free cash funds. And so over the course of the budget season, it was unclear until the very last minute how much the capital plan would be funded for and where those funds would come from. For example, on March 27th, the plan called for $986,000 coming from the Special Purpose Stabilization account. On March 28th, the plan changed to take that $986,000, and no longer use those funds, but instead, as we will see in a future article, put $250,000 into the Special Purpose Stabilization account. And we're also putting another $250,000 plus into the OPEB accounts. My take is that we should be spending more on the capital plan. Unfortunately, due to the rules that are in place, we can't do that and can't make that determination in this meeting. But let me give you an example of something we're not doing. Everyone likes to talk about how in Lunenburg we don't maintain our buildings. And we always have to do things after the fact. We have to tear down buildings. We have a track and field that was built on the backs of $2 million of publicly raised money, volunteered money, and volunteered work. It's deteriorating. It's falling apart, largely as a result of engineering between that and the building of this building. The drainage is messed up. And as a result of that, the track is flooding on rainy days. And you can go down there and see that the walkways are beginning to collapse into the track. And the massive wall that the press box sits on is also leaning forward and will soon be a safety problem. The Capital Planning Committee didn't see that it ranked even in the top half of the capital plan. And the town manager in her recommendation didn't see it as an urgent enough issue to justify the additional funding for this article. And that's just one. There are a couple of others that I won't waste your time on. But we talk out of both sides of our mouth in Lunenburg when it comes to capital planning. And I understand that we're in a unique year. And I understand that we have to use free cash to deal with this tax problem. But as we are in a unique year, why are we putting money into a special purpose stabilization account that we don't have clear eyes as to where we'll spend the money? And why are we putting money into the OPEB account when we have no idea when we'll see the benefits of that account? So I'm voting yes, but that's why I put a hold on the next couple of articles, and maybe we can talk about them then. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Again, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. This is actually my last town meeting on the Capital Planning Committee. Compliments of the Finance Committee asking me to stay on until the end of this appointment season. I'm speaking again as an individual, as the previous speaker did speak, as Capital Planning has not discussed what I'm about to say. But I don't disagree with the previous speaker's comments totally. The previous speaker and I have butted heads for a number of years on items, but I do more or less agree with his comments just now. But I also believe that the capital planning process is a solid one. We've been using it for more than 2 decades. I think there's some tweaks that need to be made the next time we do a charter review, but that's for the future. I just would like to make the comment that the people on the Capital Planning Committee take it very seriously when we review these projects. And we have a project or two over the past couple of years that we have pushed back on really hard and for good reason. And it turns out that our concerns were verified. So those are my comments at this point. The changes to the capital process, about the only way you can do it is through the charter. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else at the microphone or raising their hand. I'll have to say that we're ready to vote on the capital plan. Article 6 is now before you, and voting is now open. Open. Don't push it till I say open. Ready to vote, open. What's the difference? No? Okay. They're gibbering in my ear over here. They hide behind the screen so that only I have to listen. Okay. Okay, voting is now closed. How many in favor of Article 6? 103 to 6. Article 6 majority vote passes. Article 7, the budget. The budget is on page 16 if you're following along. Mr. Franco.
Thank you. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $41,362,299.88, transfer $746,368.15 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund, transfer $59,968.64 from the reserve for the MSB debt, that's the Mass School Building Authority debt, transfer $39,321.78 from the Artificial Turf Revolving Fund, transfer $47,503 from the PEG, that's Public Education Government Access Fund, and Cable-Related Enterprise Fund, transfer $271,000 from the Health Insurance Stabilization account, and transfer $57,587.50 from water betterment revenue to defray the charges and expenses of the town for fiscal year 2024 of $42,584,048.95, and to fix the salaries and compensation of all elected officials of the town and any other items included in the budget of the town manager.
Second.
There's a second. Select Board, your recommendation?
Select Board recommends approval 4-0.
And Finance?
Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
Okay. I'll bet the town manager's making a presentation.
Yes, thank you,
All
Mr.
righty.
Moderator.
Thank you.
Okay. For this article, if you can refer to your annual town meeting booklet, pages 16 through 19. So let's talk about the budget timeline to date. The Capital Planning Committee began the fiscal 24 capital planning process in August 2022 and met with departments in October through November 2022. I sent target budgets to departments in December 2022 that were due back on January 10th, 2023. The Capital Planning Committee finalized the prioritization of projects for the fiscal 24 capital plan on December 28th, 2022, and I presented a preliminary fiscal 24 capital plan in January and a revised plan in March. And as required by the town charter, the town manager presents a preliminary fiscal 20 budget by mid-February. The recommendation today reflects maintaining current service levels with some exceptions. It is a balanced budget proposal based on the use of recurring revenues for operating costs, but does use funds from the Health Insurance Stabilization account to offset insurance increases. It reflects conservative revenue projections, and it meets or exceeds the town's financial policies, including transferring $100,000 from free cash to the regular stabilization account, $250,000 from free cash to the special purpose stabilization account, to fund large future capital projects that are one-time expenditures, and transfers $282,855 from free cash to the town's other post-employment benefits account, which is 10% of the previous year's certified free cash. When we look at our estimated revenues, they are made up of different sources, including property taxes, state aid, and local receipts. When you look at property taxes, it's calculated by adding 2.5% to the prior year's tax levy per Proposition 2.5, includes an estimate of $200,000 for new growth, and the debt exclusion amount of $2,477,704 for a total of $31,422,519. State aid reflects the Governor's House 1 state aid figure, which is a 0.38 increase for a total of $10,540,787. Local receipts reflects a 1.6 increase, which is $50,000 increase over the previous fiscal year's estimate for motor vehicle excise taxes, but level funds all other local receipt categories for a total of $3,160,153. Another revenue source is available funds, and part of that is use of free cash. This budget uses $2,625,123 from certified free cash available for appropriation. $1.5 million was voted for the overlay account for the fiscal 23 tax abatement costs, $4,000 towards the prior year expense, $467,268 towards the fiscal 24 capital plan, $282,855 into the OPEB trust fund, $100,000 into the regular stabilization account, $250,000 into the special purpose stabilization account, and $25,000 for the Historical Commission Historic Homes Survey article. On the revenue side is also the enterprise budgets. We have 4 enterprise accounts: public access, sewer, water, and solid waste. The public access accounts for $210,764, which includes indirect costs of $47,503. Sewer enterprise is $2,086,219, which includes indirect costs of $99,551, and sewer debt of $646,816. And the sewer also covers sewer OPEB liability, which is $1,000 from sewer retained earnings, sewer capital reserve for $36,621 from sewer retained earnings, and the water enterprise for $25,000, and the solid waste enterprise account for $302,000, which is the pay-as-you-throw program. Looking at the expenditure side, on the town side, the budget recommendation reflects requests to increase staffing levels for certain town departments. There is an increase in hours for the assistant town manager, HR director, from 28 hours to 32 hours a week, increase the hours for the treasurer collector from 36 to 40 hours a week, increase hours for the council on aging outreach coordinator from 27 to 36 hours a week, and adds a part-time council on aging outreach assistant position for 10 hours a week, and adds salary funding for recreational programming. This does not include funding for an additional police officer for fiscal 24 for the 10-year staffing plan due to the impact of the current police collective bargaining agreement on year 2 of the agreement. The 10-year staffing plan will resume in 25. The fiscal 24 budget recommendation reflects the following increases for the schools. For Monty Tech, it includes a 12% increase for the Montechusett Technical Assessment based on the minimum required contribution and the increase of 3 students in the foundation enrollment. This is $127,014 over fiscal 23. For the Lunenburg Public Schools, it includes a 2.5% increase, which is $558,133 over fiscal 23. I'm now going to turn it over to Superintendent Burnham so she can briefly present information from the fiscal 24 school budget.
Good morning. Before you, you see the overview and the breakdown of the FY24 school department budget. The total budget in the amount of $22,883,442 represents a 2.5% increase overall, but you can see the breakdown in personnel represents a 0.76% increase, and the non-personnel budget is a 6.99% increase, largely connected to the increase in health insurance. This budget includes all contractual increases, step increases, longevity and degree advancements for our teachers, health insurance increase at the rate of 6.2%, the general education transportation increase, as well as 2 new positions, a teacher of humanities at the high school and a secretary at the district level to handle new enrollment for residents moving into Lunenburg and registering for our schools, as well as the transportation related to those enrollments, and our process coordinator resource, which is scheduling all of our special education meetings. We identified several staff positions in our 5-year staffing plan that were priority for the FY24 year. However, we will fund several of those positions with ESSER 3 monies or other grant-funded sources. Those include a teacher for targeted math instruction at the high school, a school psychologist at the primary school, a counselor for Tier 1 social emotional learning at the primary school, and we are still in the process of determining whether or not there will be grant funds available to continue with a licensed practical nurse position. There are still some unknown factors. We do have a reserve budget within the budget before you. We have not reached final agreements in negotiations with the Lunenburg custodians and with the Lunenburg cafeteria workers. We do not anticipate any COVID grant continuation, but we do remain hopeful that there will be continued grant sources released from the Department of Education. Annually, we receive circuit breaker funds, but we do not find out what that final figure is until typically summertime, but we anticipate that we will continue to be able to cover costs at 65%. Additionally, our federal and state grants, all of our title grants, Title 1, 2, 4, special education grants, those are annual grants, but we do not learn the allocation for any of those grants until summertime.
Moving on to non-discretionary expenditures. Budgetary highlights for non-discretionary funding include the solid waste recycling program, which reflects a 12.8% increase based on the fiscal 23 expenditures. This is $40,141 over the current fiscal year. Debt service reflects a 21.7% decrease of $979,710 over fiscal 23. Cherry sheet offsets and charges reflects a 14.7% decrease based on the governor's state budget proposal, which is $194,618 over the previous fiscal year. Allowance for abatements for fiscal 24 reflects a 3.41% increase over the amount raised on the fiscal 23 recap, which is $3,958 over fiscal 23. Our retirement assessment reflects a 13.5% increase over the previous fiscal year for Worcester Regional Retirement, which is $228,822. For health insurance, it reflects a 6.2% rate increase for active employees and a 5% rate increase for retirees, but overall increase of 20% for town active employee health insurance, town retiree health insurance, and school retiree health insurance, which is $501,794 over the current fiscal year. Our rate renewal for the cost of individual and family insurance plans is 6.2% increase over the previous fiscal year for active employees and 5% for retirees, but the overall costs have increased due to increase in enrollment figures. Retirements that were unknown at the beginning of the year were part of the change. Additional active plans were added to the estimate, which included pending retirees that did not currently carry active plans, but their replacements may, and estimates change for both town and school retiree plans. Fiscal sustainability has been an important feature of all of our previous budget recommendations, and the availability of funds from the health insurance stabilization account is proof of that financial planning. At the May 2022 annual town meeting, the town voted to create a health insurance stabilization fund with the amount the town had saved from a full month holiday premium that the town received in fiscal 22 from our health insurance company. And this is being used partially today to help fund this increase. In fiscal 23, debt service payments for the DPW renovations, the public safety building construction, and the primary school construction will be expiring, and a large portion of the MSBA debt for an old school project will be ending, and therefore will be an overall decrease in the town's debt service for fiscal 24, totaling $979,711. The public safety building and primary school were both excludable debt projects. The fiscal 24 budget does not include any new borrowing. If we look at our current debt schedule and how it aligns with our debt policy that limits our non-exempt borrowing to 4% of our total levy, and exempt and non-exempt borrowing combined to no more than 14% of our total levy, we are currently below the limit for each of these thresholds per our financial policy. At the end of fiscal 23, we have approximately $1,010,000 of excludable debt dropping off the primary school and public safety complex debt, but there is an offset by the MSBA reimbursement that is excludable debt that reduces significantly at the end of fiscal 23. Another part of expenditures is non-appropriated expenditures, which include cherry sheet charges, cherry sheet offsets, and funds from the overlay and tax title expenses. The cherry sheet charges and cherry sheet offsets are based on the governor's budget proposal and indicate a decrease in cherry sheet charges and cherry sheet offsets. The overlay account is for fiscal 24, unrelated to Article 5, and is estimated at $120,000, and the tax title account is level funded at $29,000. To conclude, the fiscal 24 recommended budget includes the governor's budget proposal for state aid, figures which are subject to change once it's finalized by the state, fully funds all known contractual obligations and increased costs for non-personnel related expenditures. It is a balanced budget that draws $271,000 from the health insurance stabilization account to offset significant increases in health insurance for next fiscal year. It maintains existing staff with one additional part-time town employee, funding for recreational staff for programming, and increases in certain hours for certain positions. And recommended budget includes the school committee's budget that was approved by the school committee as well. This leaves an unappropriated balance of $9,772, and the current recommendation leaves a balance of approximately $209,000 of free cash that will fall towards next year's free cash.
Excellent. So here's how we handle the budget, similar to the way we were talking about the consent calendar. In this case, I'm going to go through items. Starting on page 16 is the column to the farthest right. It says FY24 TM recommended budget. I'll read the general categories down. If you want to ask a question about a particular category, just yell out hold, and we'll go back and discuss that. We're just trying to focus in where people's interests might be. When we're finished going through all of each and every one of the items, then people can discuss the holds, or if there was something we went by, but you still have a question, you can still get up and raise it at that time. When we're done with all of the questions and you get all of the answers that you need, then we'll vote on the entire budget when we're done. Okay? So again, reading from the column on the farthest right. Total maturing debt, $3,518,012.81. Total general government unclassified, $3,968,170.45. Total general government, $1,974,422.04. Did I read that wrong, Heather? Excuse me. $1,974,422.04. $322.04. Total central purchasing, $80,300. Subtotal police, $2,339,893.24. Fire department, $1,607,992.68. Radio watch, $308,719.96. Total protection, $4,478,848.28. Total health and sanitation, $104,961.15. DPW, $2,168,287.64. Total facilities and buildings, $981,645.45. Total solid waste recycling, $352,775. Council on Aging, $224,306.85. Veterans, $110,775. Total assistance, $335,081.85. Total schools, $24,082,518. Total library, $539,126.28 for a total budget of $42,584,048.95. I didn't hear any holds, but if anybody has questions who want to address at the microphone or raise their hand on the stage.
My name is Darrell Plant. I live at 490 Lancaster Ave. As far as the schools are concerned, $24 million, a little over half, the entire budget is being spent on our schools. And the reason why I'm speaking right now, because a lot of people don't follow it. I have a child in school right now. It is now in grades 3 through 5, it is now considered one of the worst performing school districts in this entire region. There are other issues. I'd have a lot to say about it. I've gone to school committee meetings. You can look at the public access and make up your own minds on the school. So taxes have become very important in this town recently. They're going to become even more important as the economy seems to be declining. Spent a lot of money. I remember years ago, Lunenburg didn't mind spending the money on the schools because they were high performing. That's no longer the case, and I dare anyone to say otherwise. That was a statement. Now I have a question for the town manager. 2.5 years ago, I brought to the town a dump my child and I found on a hike. I know about a year or so ago, they appropriated some funds for that in the budget to have a survey done, possibly some site work done. I don't see anything on that now. This dump, if people don't remember it, lies right on the Catacuma River. That river or brook runs right into our wells. Up to this point, other than that money being appropriated, possibly some survey being done, not one single piece of trash has been taken off site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I answer that?
You may.
The previous speaker. That appropriation was made at a town meeting. We did, in fact, put that out to bid as we're required to due to the dollar amount per procurement laws, and we did not receive any proposals. So we're reassessing how to approach that project.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Donna Paticchiola, 132 Hemlock Drive in Lunenburg, and I don't know if we had discussed on page 16, it lists an assessor's salary, and there's nothing there, and I was just questioning the amount for CJ.
So can you point to me where that is, Ms.
Oh,
Patterson?
page 16, under general government, item number 27, assessor's salary.
Okay,
I just wondered why it was blank.
okay. And did you have a question about that line?
Yeah, I mean, there were questions like how much money CJ made, and people had discussed that he made a certain amount, but it's not here.
So, Ms. Lemieux, can you address line item 27? Seems to be empty, but can you address number 27?
Line item 27 would include the entire, that should not be there, because the assessor's total budget is in the assessor's administration account. And, sorry, the finance director, you want to answer this?
Well,
So the
line
line
item 27
item
is
that-
assessor's salaries. Is that elected assessor's salary?
Yes, yeah.
That's
Okay.
exactly what that is. That was when the Board of Assessors were compensated quite a while back, but haven't been for a number of years. That's why you see that line funded at zero.
I think it was like 1985, because I was on the finance committee way back then, believe it or not. Okay, thank you. Sir?
Good morning, Peter. Yeah, that's okay. Good morning, Peter Beardmore, 282 Pleasant Street. I'd just like to briefly address the comments of the previous speaker pertaining to the school department. And the previous speaker speaks frequently in public comment at Lunenburg school committee meetings. He and I disagree on a number of topics, but I really appreciate the way he pays attention and the way he calls out certain things that are happening in our town and in our schools. Anybody who looks at the report cards for our schools are going to find areas that need improvement. Just like when I look at my own children's report cards, there are areas that frequently need improvement. And one of the areas that he pointed out is true when you look at the performance of one particular school in our system through the lens of MCAS. We are performing below where we would like to be performing. And there are reasons for that. There are demographic reasons related to that, and there are also curriculum reasons related to that the school department has put in some massive transformation of our curriculum to be able to align with state standards so that we can perform better. But unfortunately, there's a lagging effect there, and we are experiencing that right now. And my hope is that as we continue to make investments in those areas, we will continue to improve. But one area that I do want to make people aware of, and I didn't bring the exact figures today, but this is my take and my estimations, but I can assure you they are backed up by real numbers. Our overall performance of our school department is just a hair below the top third in state high schools in Massachusetts. Our per pupil spending is just a hair above the bottom third in the state of Massachusetts across our school department. Our local funding per student, as opposed to state funding through Chapter 70, is well above the state average in the state of Massachusetts. And that is a result of really the debacle of the Student Opportunity Act and the effects that it's had on towns like Lunenburg. So we are doing more with less. And that issue was brought to our state representatives and senator when they attended a selectmen meeting recently. And the answer that they got was pretty much, it is what it is, in not so many words. And my hope, as I've stated on this floor before, is that we can hold, because we contribute an awful lot to the state of Massachusetts through our income taxes and through our sales taxes. We're not getting our fair share. And unfortunately, where that's being seen in particular is in the funding of our school department. Yes, $24 million is a lot of money. It absolutely is. But when you look at the dollars that are spent on a per pupil basis across the state of Massachusetts, we are well below the mean. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else at the microphone or raising their hand, so I'll declare that we're ready to vote on Article 7. This requires a 2/3 vote. So voting is now open. How's that? I did it good that time? Perfect? Gotta love it. Okay, looks like everybody's had a chance to vote. Voting is now closed. What are the results? Need 2/3. 98 to 8 out of 106. I'll declare that's 2/3, and the article passes. Article 8, I believe, is Ms. Soroka.
Well, I'm so glad that passed. I move the town vote to transfer from Article 7 of May 6, 2023 Annual Town Meeting, line number 13A, Salary Reserve, the sum of $26,043.04 to fund the first year of the fiscal year 24 through fiscal year 26 collective bargaining agreement. It's on.
I'll get nice and close.
I don't want to.
You don't want to?
Nope.
You want to use mine?
No.
No, okay.
Collective bargaining agreement dated July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026 with the Lunenburg Professional Firefighters PFFM Local 5369 Union.
Thank you. And it's exactly what's in your warrant under Article 8, if you didn't hear all of it. There's a second. Select Board, your recommendation.
Recommended approval 4-0.
Thank you. Finance Committee.
Finance Committee deferred.
Okay, so you'll have to take a public vote. People on Article 8, sir.
Yeah, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. If we could, through you, Mr. Moderator, just have a brief overlay of what the increases are over, I'm assuming, a 3-year contract.
Okay. Well, my notes say she's here to answer questions and may have slides.
I do have slides. Thank you,
Excellent.
Mr. Ryder. This article is requesting approval for funding for the first year of a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with the fire union. When the town goes into negotiations, we have consistently looked at wage data from comparable towns. We included Ashburnham, Ayr, Groton, Pepperell, Rutland, Sterling, Townsend, Westminster, and Winchendon, and it all indicated that we were paying our fire union employees in the middle percentile, so a market adjustment was not being recommended, just a cost of living adjustment for each year of the agreement. The agreement reached includes a 2.5% COLA for each year of the agreement. It also includes a 4-step for the fire captain position and increasing the differential between the ranks of lieutenant and captain so that the year 1, it changes from a 3% differential to a 5% differential between the lieutenant step 4 and the fire captain step 1, and a 6% differential between the lieutenant step 4 and the fire captain step 1, and a 7% differential between the lieutenant step 4 and the fire captain step 1 in the last year of the agreement. It also adds a $2 out of grade pay for career firefighter when no officer is on shift, and adds a $1,000 stipend for the safe coordinator position. The year 1 projected impact is $26,043.04, and the projected impact for year 2 is $36,022.18, and the impact for year 3 is projected at $25,320.14. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Did that address your question, sir? Okay, good. Seeing nobody else at the microphone, I declare that we're ready to vote on this, the fire union
Mr.
agreement.
Moderator.
Oops, somebody won.
Finance Committee needs
Oh,
to-
I'm sorry, Finance, yep.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 8? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for recommendation.
Make a motion, we recommend approval of Article 8.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Mr. Nizzolo.
Aye.
Mr. Gray.
Aye.
Mr. Baelish.
Aye.
Mr. Simeoni.
Aye.
Mr. Bernard.
Aye.
And an aye from myself. Finance Committee recommends approval 6-0.
Thank you. All right, ready to vote on Article 8? Voting is now, but looks like that's about everybody. Voting is now closed. What are the results? On Article 8, 98-3. We're seeing a trend here. Okay, Article 8 is passed, 98-3. Moving on to Article 9, Mr. Jeffries. Or are you going to present this, Ms. Bellotta? Go right ahead.
I move that the town vote to replace the current salary schedule in Chapter 70, Section 70-8A, the Salary Administration Plan of the General Bylaws, with the fiscal year 2024 salary schedule as recommended by the Personnel Committee as printed in the annual town meeting warrant booklet, which authorizes wage increases for fiscal year 2024 for permanent employees not covered by a collective bargaining unit agreement or individual contract. And further, to transfer from Article 7 of the May 6, 2023 annual town meeting, line number 13A, salary reserve, the sum of $38,095.13 to fund the wage increases for salary administration plan employees.
Second.
Second. Select Board, your recommendation?
Select Board recommends approval unanimously.
Thank you. Finance?
Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
Okay. Ms. Bellotti, you're going to address this?
Yes, thank you, Town Moderator. Good morning, my name is Joanna Bellotta. Oh, sugar. Good morning, my name is Joanna Bellotta, 362 Sunset Lane, and I am the current chair of the Personnel Committee. I would first like to thank Eric Arnold, who was the previous chair. He resigned due to some family commitments in February, so I've been filling in an interim for him.
And all this is found on page 20 in your booklet if you're looking for it, okay?
Thank you. Our current members are myself, Wendy Bertram is our vice chair, Donna Fortune is a member, as well as Sue Andrew is our clerk. We have a non-voting member, Julie Bellevue, the assistant town manager / HR coordinator director, who helps us very much through this process of working with our SAP employees. And there is an open seat on the Personnel Committee. If anybody would like to volunteer, you're more than welcome to join our fun group. The Personnel Committee has been working over the last 18 approximately months on discussions of job descriptions and classifications and compensation. This was a very big task that the committee took on, and we really determined that we needed some assistance. We worked with the town manager, town administrator. They found some cash for us to hire a consulting company and really start to work on a scope of what we wanted to look at, our current staff. So we looked at evaluating the current job descriptions for the purpose of classification and compensation, conducted interviews and revised position descriptions as necessary with existing town staff, established comparable communities and conducted salary surveys with other communities, and reviewed the current compensation plan in an analysis of midpoint differentials within a range. We compared Lunenburg's current compensation plans to determine internal equity. We drafted a classification plan with recommended grades for each position provided for a final report. We're a little behind schedule, so that recommendation will come in front of the town at the fall town meeting. So today we're here to ask for the salary administration plan employees. There's approximately 84 employees, and what they are, they're not covered in any contractual agreement, so we represent them. There's 43 active positions, and the positions include department heads, seasonal staff, part-time staff, call fire staff, and non-grandfathered reserve police officers are among those 84 employees. Our Personnel Committee voted for a 2.5% COLA for these staff with a retro back to 7/1/23 once we determine the compensation. So when we come in fall, that would be retro back on comp, but just COLA is what we're here to ask you for today. And that is a total of $38,095.13. To just repeat that, $38,095.13 is what we're seeking today. And as they said, it was approved by the Finance Committee on March 3rd and by the Select Board on April 3rd. I thank you.
Stay right there. Anybody want to ask questions about the salary administration plan? Don't see anybody at the microphones or raising their hands, so I'll declare that we're ready to vote. This is Article 9. Voting is now open. Wonder if we've got to get to the magic 98 number. Okay, looks like we're stuck there at 93, so voting is now closed. 86 to 7 out of 93 people, majority vote. The article passes. Article 10 was in the consent calendar. Article 11 was a hold, so Mr. Franco, if you could move Article 11.
I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $250,000 to the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Select Board. Your recommendation?
Select Board recommends approval 4-0.
Thank you. Finance?
Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
My notes say the town manager is available to answer questions. Do you want to make a presentation or answer questions?
I have a couple slides.
Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah. That hopefully will answer questions.
That'll answer them.
Okay. So this fund was established at the May 2017 annual town meeting under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B. The designated purpose for this fund was to put aside funds for large ticket vehicles and equipment. By putting aside these funds into the Special Purpose Stabilization, we subsidize the annual appropriation for the capital plan in years that spike based on needs the capital plan has for large ticket vehicles and equipment. It saves money by deferring debt and interest payments for these large capital items. By managing the town's debt, this is a quote from Division of Local Services, a plan to accumulate cash over time and pay outright for a moderate range capital expenditures helps preserve debt capacity for major, higher dollar purchases or projects. An approach that balances debt with pay-as-you-go practices and protects against unforeseen costs is viewed in a positive light by credit rating agencies. This fund currently has a balance of $1,912,808. Based on a 5-year outlook, depositing $250,000 at this town meeting and depositing a total of approximately $400,000 to $500,000 over the subsequent 2 years, we will be able to cover all large DPW and fire equipment until fiscal 28 without borrowing. As this fund builds up the town, we'll be able to purchase these items without borrowing. Outside of these large capital purchases, the town has large building projects on the horizon, including renovations to Turkey Hill Elementary School, and there's an ongoing discussion about municipal buildings. The recommendation is to appropriate $250,000 from free cash into this account. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Sir.
Peter Beardmore, 282 Pleasant Street. I'll spare everybody explaining my purpose and my disagreement with this amount from what I discussed in the capital plan article. But a little bit of background on this. I sat on the Finance Committee for a little over 3 years, and every year we made contributions to the Special Purpose Stabilization Account as prescribed by the second priority in our fiscal policies for what we do with free cash. That policy requires that there is a plan for the Special Purpose Stabilization Account in terms of where we are going to spend the money. And at no time did we actually get into a whole lot of detail about that plan. The discussions were all about the cost of ambulances and fire trucks, which, by the way, are super expensive. This year, we spent $500,000 roughly on an ambulance that was funded by ARPA. That's great. We didn't have to tap this account to do that. Over the last 2 years, we've spent $500,000 roughly on DPW equipment, and then another $500,000 a couple of months ago from ARPA on DPW equipment. The thing about DPW equipment is that we've managed to buy as we go for DPW equipment. We've never tapped an account like this for DPW, and in fact, in my 3+ years on the Finance Committee, DPW was never said in conjunction with this account. But as a result of what we've gone through over the course of the last several months, high dollar trucks has now included DPW, and the town manager, and a brief background of history, I did ask her specifically for the plan. She did reply back that over the course of the next 5 or 6 years, the plan would fund fire equipment and DPW equipment without really much detail through FY28. Again, I don't have a problem with a savings account to pay for this, to pay for these trucks. We have $1.9 million in the account right now, and we have other things that we have to deal with right now that we're not dealing with. And so that's really the objection that I have to this year spending that money in this account. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Not to be a tag team, but Peter and I...
Well, I'm wondering if other people want to talk, but that's all right. Go ahead.
I honestly wish other people would get up and speak if they have an issue or a question. But anyway, through you, Mr. Moderator, there may need to be clarification from Town Council. But I believe in one of my meetings with him in the past, we've had conversation about this account, and that the way it was created at the town meeting, and I forget the year, anyway, the way it was worded in the article when it was created, that the money, although by practice and policy we are spending the money on what we've talked about for the last few minutes, that money is available at town meeting for appropriation for anything. It just requires, I believe, a 2/3 vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Not sure exactly what the question is, Mr. Costa, but if you want to address the voters' concerns.
I will do my best, Mr. Moderator. I'll be honest, I don't recall the conversation. Mr. Passios and I have had more than a few over the years.
What a shock.
I don't recall the specific conversation, and I don't have the vote establishing the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund before me. Reference would need to be made back to the town meeting vote to establish that fund. At the time of establishment of a stabilization fund, any stabilization fund, it's the role of the town meeting to establish the purpose of that fund, and then expenditures from the fund, Mr. Passios is correct, they're by 2/3. Used to be 2/3 in, 2/3 out. Now it's simple majority in, post Municipal Modernization Act in 2016, but it's still a 2/3 vote to appropriate out of any stabilization fund. And those appropriations can only be for the purposes for which the account was established. But again, I don't have the vote in front of me, so I can't speak to what permissible purposes would be for the expenditure of the funds in this specific account.
Thank you. Nobody else at the microphone and nobody raising their hand. I'll declare that we're ready to vote. This is Article 11, $250,000 into the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. Voting's open. Got ahead of me. I know. I was saying we're ready to vote. Ready to vote, open, as long as everybody gets an opportunity before I close it. I'm not really concerned whether it's open or I know. What words I use. less important, then it's not. What's important is when I close it. Make sure everybody has a chance to get their clicker clicked. All right, I think we're kind of frozen at 89. A couple people have left. All those in favor of Article 11, let's see the results. It's closed. Thank you. 63 and 26, more than a majority, and the article is passed. Article 12 was another hold. If Ms. Soroka could move Article 12.
I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $282,855 and transfer from sewer enterprise retained earnings the sum of $1,000 to the OPEB trust fund established at the November 30th, 2010 special town meeting.
Thank you. There's a second. Select Board, your recommendation?
We recommend to approve 4-0.
Thank you. Finance?
Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
Okay. Do you want to address this article, Ms. Soroka, Town Manager? Just waiting for questions? Just waiting for questions.
Of course.
Naturally. There are other people in the room. The video eventually will show that there are other people here other than these two gentlemen. Go right ahead. You got up first.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. My question, I was hoping there would be a presentation with this article. We're depositing money into a trust fund. I just want to verify that the appropriations that we're putting in on an annual basis are decreasing our unfunded liability, where that liability is at this point, and to verify that it's decreasing. Actually, all I need to know is that it's decreasing. And year over year, are we funding our new exposure? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, they're going to put Karen to work in her last town meeting. Let's just give them a minute. That's why she's at the head table, Kathy. Karen.
So these funds have been going in over the past several years, and on an annual basis, if we are funding a portion of the liability, it does bring the liability down. There are other factors that, of course, are taken into account when the total liability is determined by our actuary, like interest rates and things like that. But I can tell you from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22, the liability in 21 was $66,164,275, and it dropped in FY 22 to $51,460,097. So, and I think, like I said, it's a result of both changes in the interest calculation to determine what that total liability is, as well as contributions that have been made into the fund.
Thank you. Karen, can I suggest this is what people do? They retire, then they come back as consultants, and you make a lot more money that way, okay? So let me suggest you keep that in the back. Sir.
I have a number of questions. First, when we talk about liability, could you explain what that liability is?
So that's other post-employment benefits other than health insurance.
Okay.
So it's your pension, medical, and I'm sorry, want to answer this, Karen? Yep.
Could you give me an idea of like what a post-employment benefit other than health insurance might be?
Oh, sorry, such as yeah.
Okay.
Includes
including
medical,
health insurance, right?
Includes
Okay.
medical and life insurance,
Okay.
not your Worcester County contribution for retirement costs.
So we make, we pay for, we contribute on an annual basis to pensions, to health insurance for retirees. Has there ever been a year that we've tapped a trust fund to alleviate what we do on a year-to-year basis to fund and take care of our retirees?
We have, I mean, we just probably over the last 5+ years have started putting money into this fund. It was never required for a number of years that that liability even be recognized, but with changes in GASB, you now have to do that. So for a number of years, we weren't funding that at all. We started to fund it now, and I would think that this would be a long-term investment and that we wouldn't start to draw on any of those funds until we got to the point where we're close to funding that liability.
Excellent segue for my next question. When?
I guess my answer to that question is who knows? Because, I mean, number one, it's going to depend on how much we fund on an annual basis. And the other thing is, I mean, there are different things that we can do that will hopefully lower that liability. And one of the things that both the town manager and I have discussed with our investment company is changing the way that the portfolio on the OPEB funding is split so that it's in a slightly more risky investment, but as a result of that, the rate of return on those funds will go up, and that will, as a result, reduce the liability. So, I mean, there's a number of factors that would determine what that number is, and I wouldn't think that that would be fully funded for a number of years.
Yeah. I would characterize it as there's no end in sight. And I guess that's the issue that I have here. I can certainly understand that there are changes in accounting rules that have kind of caused us to need to do this from a credit perspective. We haven't seen a giant increase in our credit rating as a result of this. The benefits of this are best case decades away, and we're spending $282,855. And I know we're talking about our credit ratings right now. Yes, our credit ratings are good, and they have increased slightly because of a number of reasons. This is $282,000 that is to address something that Lunenburg has always done out of our pockets on an annualized basis. And the benefits that we will see from this, aside from our credit improvements, are theoretical at best. And it's $282,000 we're not spending on things that we could take care of now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terry Birchfield. I live at 1 Rose Garden Lane. And OPEB has been a big deal for many years. And I think every time we've heard what the liability is, you know, like after you gulp a little bit, you realize that you may never hit that number, but it is a big number. And I would encourage people to take a look back at the cost of health insurance when it was reviewed, the number of employees who were listed under health insurance that were retirees, and that the majority of health insurance costs in this town are for retirees. And if the town were in such a financial situation that it was necessary to tap OPEB, that could be done to cover the current costs of health insurance costs for retirees. It's the only thing it can be used for. It doesn't have to be there forever. We're putting $280,000 into it today with the understanding that we may never tap that trust fund. We may get to a point where we stop putting money into the trust fund, but to the extent that we can put money into the trust fund, it does help with the credit ratings, and I don't know what the next borrowing is going to be, whether it's going to be about Turkey Hill, whether it's going to be about Marshall Park, whatever it is that's coming down the road for borrowing. The way that we fund the OPEB, the way that we fund any of the trust funds is helpful. And again, I think my question when we first started putting money in, when I was on the Finance Committee, my question was, do we have to leave it there until we get to the liability number, or is it accessible in 2 years when we have a cataclysmic issue? Can we pull that money out? And yes, we can. So I would just encourage, again, people to go back, look at the health insurance number, look at the number of retirees or the amount that's associated with retiree health insurance versus active, and it's a good, to me, it's a good place to put money if we have it available to place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Birchfield, we need you back on some of these committees, you know. Oh, yeah, we do. Go right ahead.
Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road.
I can't hear you, Rhonda. You got to move it down or
I don't think
on
I
your
can.
tiptoes, whichever works.
Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road. I just see it as a responsibility issue. We shouldn't be racking up all these costs if we have no intention of even putting a minimal amount of money forward towards paying them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any hands or anyone else at the microphone, so I'm going to declare that we're ready to vote, and voting is open. How was that? Perfect? Thank you. I learned. We're halfway through the town meeting. I'm getting better. Only the third time we've done it. Okay, we're kind of stuck at 88, so I'm going to declare that voting is now closed. This is a majority vote, 69 in favor, 19 opposed. Article passes by more than a majority. We now move on to 13, Mr. Jeffries.
I move that the town vote pursuant to the provisions of General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, to create a new special purpose stabilization fund to be known as the Opioid Settlement Stabilization Fund, for dedication without further appropriation of 100% of opioid litigation settlement funds received by the town, which may be expended for opioid use disorder treatment, support programs for people with opioid use disorder in treatment and recovery, connects to care for people with or at risk of developing opioid use disorder, harm reduction efforts to prevent overdose deaths or other opioid-related harms, support of diversion and deflection programs, and strategies for criminal justice-involved persons with opioid use disorder. Support of pregnant or parenting women and their families, including babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome, and preventing misuse of opioids and implementing prevention education, and further, to transfer the sum of $84,740.25 from free cash, representing opioid litigation settlements received in fiscal year 23 into said opioid settlement stabilization fund.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Select Board.
Select Board recommends approval unanimously.
Thank you. Finance.
Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
Town Manager has some slides.
Just one.
Just one.
Just to give a little background, in 2018, the town engaged a team of lawyers as part of the national lawsuit against the drug manufacturers and the wholesale distributors to pursue all civil remedies against those in the chain of distribution of prescription opioids responsible for the opioid epidemic. In fiscal 23, the town began receiving payments associated with these settlements related to the J&J settlement and the distributor settlement, totaling $84,740.25. Right now, we have limited guidance with respect to the appropriation and expenditure of opioid settlement funds, but this warrant article allows the creation of a special purpose stabilization fund that would transfer the amount the town has received and all future amounts the town receives from settlement funds into this fund for specific purposes outlined in the motion.
Thank you. Oh, come on, Mr. Passios. You got to say something.
I'm deferring to...
Go ahead, Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you. This is an article that I strongly support. The town engaged with numerous other communities and several other states to join into lawsuits really related to the opioid epidemic that's facing our country. So what this does is, a lot of times what happens is when communities engage in these lawsuits, they take the money and it goes into your general coffers. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, hey, any lawsuit that we're engaged in which we receive a settlement amount, let's make sure we're allocating those funds to go to the people who need it the most. So, the family who's struggling to get, their loved one into treatment, that this really creates a fund to be able to have that support and fully funded by the people who created this situation to begin with. And so this to me is a responsible way of looking at the epidemic that we're in. It's, again, taking these funds, using it for a very specific purpose, helping the people and the families who are in need, and not just, paving another road or putting in another sidewalk, but really being there for the members of our community who have been struggling and going through issues of losing loved ones because of addiction. So this is a responsible way, I believe, for the town to work with these funds as they're received in, and I strongly encourage your support on this article this morning.
There we go. I feel better now. Go ahead.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. The previous speaker answered one of my two questions already, and I thought he was going to, so that's why I deferred. I'd secondly just want to understand that presently we're authorizing the money to be put into that account, and any subsequent money that comes in will automatically go into that account, so we don't have to come back to town meeting. I understand that part. What I'm a little fuzzy on is, okay, the money's in there. Presently, we have no guidance as to who's going to administer and or expend these funds. So once this money is in here right now, there is nobody authorized in this town to do anything with that money. Am I correct?
The town manager can answer that, but I do not believe that that is correct. If you look at the language of the article, we do have the wording in here that says which may be expended for the use. I think that what this does is it then prompts, if this passes, it prompts the need for us to have some internal regulation on how these funds will be expended. And I'll turn to the town manager for further clarification.
Actually, I was going to defer to town council. I think he can.
That's like passing the buck. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Moderator. So I had set the stage a bit for this answer because I said a moment ago in addressing the previous speaker on a different article that appropriations out of stabilization funds require a 2/3 vote. So the idea of this article is that it's appropriating monies that are currently certified free cash. It's additionally funneling or appropriating funds received in the future as part of these opioid settlement monies directly into this new stabilization account. But future appropriations would require a vote of town meeting, a 2/3 vote of town meeting to appropriate out. These funds would need to be used for the purposes specified, but once those purposes are determined at the administration level, they would come back to you as would any other transfer from a stabilization fund. And that's the latest guidance we have from the state. This has been somewhat of a moving target in the sense that the state only recently authorized the creation or recommended the creation of these stabilization funds for the opioid settlement monies. They have provided guidance documents that have specified the purposes for which the monies can be used, but they've also promised that there's further guidance forthcoming, but we just don't have it yet.
Thank you. No other hands, no one at the, whoops, hello.
Hi, Tom Baelish, 114 Mulpus Road. As you can see from the documents here, the Finance Committee voted in favor of this, of creating the stabilization fund. I was not there at that meeting, and so I did not vote. I would have voted against it. I plan to vote against this. And the reason is not that I'm against any kind of education or treatment of people who deal with opioid addictions, et cetera. It's that I think we're just unnecessarily restricting the funds here. We don't have, as was just stated, we don't have full guidance on how we might use this money. It goes into free cash. I think that's a better place for it. If we want to designate and allocate money for those types of programs, I would do that as part of the normal budget process, as opposed to restricting ourselves into a specific fund for this, for these proceeds, the proceeds that have come in and any future proceeds. That's mine. That's my view, and I think rather than restrict ourselves with this cash, we should be able to allocate it the way we see fit in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Town Council.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. At the request of the town manager, I just want to offer a point of clarification. So, and again, I appreciate the comments from the previous speaker, and as I did say a moment ago, we are awaiting further guidance from the state. That having been said, all guidance that's been provided so far, including the documents that govern the receipt of these settlement funds, indicate that they can only be used for specified purposes. And in fact, there's a list of specified purposes in guidance documents issued by the state. When municipalities create these special purpose stabilization funds for these opioid settlement monies, they have the option of restricting themselves to only certain categories of uses. In Lunenburg, in the warrant article that's presently on the floor, we've listed every purpose available. And so I just want to offer clarity that while it is true that in the absence of the creation of a stabilization fund, these monies would go to the general fund, they may end up as free cash, they still couldn't be used for any purpose for which the town sees fit. The town couldn't take the monies, for example, and use them on a capital project. These monies would need to be used for the specified purposes, the strings that are attached to the settlement monies that are being received by all municipalities that have opted to participate in Massachusetts.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Anyone at the microphone? Oh, come right up.
Matt Snyder, 985 Flat Hill Road. Couple questions related to the prior two speakers.
Yep.
So it sounds like no matter where we put these funds, we're restricted in their use from what town council just said. It sounds like putting it in a stabilization fund restricts us to only be able to access the funds with a 2/3 majority vote at a town meeting, so that's only twice a year that we could access the funds. If they're otherwise earmarked and can only be used for one purpose, why would we restrict it so much to be able to access the funds when needed?
Who's going to field that?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, all eyes are on me, so I guess I'm fielding this one.
And I'll follow up after you.
So the answer is sort of yes and no. So if the monies were not placed into a stabilization fund, the monies would still need to be appropriated by town meeting, as are any monies on the budget. However, they would be appropriated as part of the general budget. They wouldn't be appropriated from stabilization the way that other stabilization fund monies are appropriated. But they would still need to be used for the same, I think it's 7 purposes that are identified within the state's guidance documents.
And if I can follow up with that and just follow up with town council, my understanding is that we have the ability as a community to kind of put in some regulations in place to create a oversight board of some nature. Is it possible that a future town meeting can designate that board with authority to expend from this account?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the previous speaker. So as things presently stand, the answer is no, because the only authorized body to appropriate funds from stabilization would be town meeting itself. Having said that, again, to go back to the previous comments, we're still waiting on further guidance from the state, and there's been talk, I think there may even be 1 or 2 pending bills in the legislature to better address the use of opioid settlement monies by municipalities. So it's certainly possible that through special or general legislation that may be passed between now and the next annual town meeting, that the circumstances have changed and that we have additional tools at our disposal that we don't presently have.
Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So with the guidance that town council has provided insofar as the fact that the money, by accepting it, has certain restrictions, and any such money, whether through the regular budget or through the stabilization fund, would have to be going through this town meeting, I would support putting it in, and I do support putting it in a special stabilization fund, because it makes the accounting of that money a whole lot easier and less tempting to think there's free cash floating around that people may inadvertently use and we'd have to account for later on. This just makes it a lot cleaner to account for the money.
I just have one final question related.
Go ahead, follow up.
Is there any benefit into the amount of funds we receive by handling the funds the way the town, the way the state is recommending? So is a stabilization fund, does that benefit us in any way that we would take in more funds than if it was just sitting in free cash, or it's not part of the calculation at all?
A lot of head shaking no, so I think the answer is no, for the record. All right. Let's see any, oh, there he is. I should look there first. I should look to your seat first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I'm going to vote yes on this for now because everything is in flux still on this program. But I do believe going forward, that the town will be better off creating a revolving fund. And if we maintain this special purpose fund, that maybe on an annual basis we transfer from this fund to the revolving fund, then there's much more flexibility on use of the money. Thank you.
I saw some head nodding that might be a thought. Go ahead. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're ready to vote. Voting is now open. There you go. Article 13, Special Stabilization Fund for Opioid Settlements. Because it's a stabilization fund, it requires 2/3. Oh, it says both 2/3 and majority on the screen. I don't know why it says both, but it's 2/3. Okay. I think we're stuck at 91. Voting is now closed. Requires 2/3. 80 to 11 out of 91. I'll declare that's 2/3, and the article passes. Mr. Alonso with Article 14.
I move the town vote to appropriate from sewer enterprise revenues the sum of $891,891.85. Transfer from the infiltration stabilization fund the sum of $9,900. Transfer from the sewer capital reserve stabilization fund the sum of $35,000. Transfer from the sewer reserve capacity stabilization fund the sum of $20,962.40, and appropriate from sewer enterprise retained earnings the sum of $382,096.70 for a total appropriation of $1,339,850.95 to operate the sewer enterprise fund for FY24, and further that $746,368.15 be included in appropriations from the general fund for indirect costs and be allocated to the sewer enterprise fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Select Board.
Select Board recommendation is approval 3-0. I guess one of us was out that evening.
Thank you. Finance.
Finance Committee recommends approval 5-0.
It's on page 21, folks, of your warrant. And my notes here say that somebody from the Sewer Commission or DPW is going to talk to us. Go right ahead.
Hi, good morning. Bill Bernard, DPW Director. So this is
Can you put the microphone up a little more towards your voice?
Certainly.
Or, thank you.
So this is to fund our sewer enterprise. So we have $891,000 in revenues, and we are transferring money from our I&I stabilization funds, $35,000 from our capital reserve stabilization fund, and $20,962 from our sewer reserve capacity fund, and we are taking $382,000 out of our retained earnings for a total appropriation of $1.3 million. There's also $746,000 for indirect costs coming out of the general fund appropriation, and that's for debt service and fringe benefits. And just a little explanation. Retained earnings are profits held by the enterprise fund and reserve in order to fund operations and invest in future projects. And at the close of FY22, we had $2.2 million in retained earnings. Debt service, currently the debt service for various sewer projects exceeds the betterment revenues. That's why we're taking so much out of the reserves this year. But in FY25, the betterment payments will exceed the current debt payments, so we'll be better off in the future. And supplier cost, that is our connection fees, user fees, and a portion of the host community debt service are also paid by the enterprise fund.
Okay, thank you. Kathy says we're ready to vote, but I have to see if anybody else has got questions, Kathy. I don't. Oh, somebody's coming. Why'd you sit so far away? It's not church, you know.
Yeah, you can have my spot. Thanks. Mike Chapdelaine, 208 Leominster Road. I'm looking at the expenditures, and I'm looking at $912,000 roughly. It's our largest expenditure, and it says miscellaneous. I'd like to know what makes up that almost $912,000.
Okay, stay right there. Sir.
Okay, give me 1 second. Oops. I printed out a, oops. Where is it?
Uh-oh.
I messed up the slideshow royally. Thank you. Okay. Oops, where am I looking? So, sorry. Our expenditures, we have an operation and maintenance contract that we have a contractor that maintains our system. We do capital improvements every year. We do scheduled maintenance every year. And we have to pay for flow meters. We have a contract for that. We pay for general counsel, and amongst other, there are other expenses.
So would that include like the running of the pump stations?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Terry
Yes.
Birchfield, Rose Garden Lane. I was just going to ask, does that amount also include the payments to Leominster and Fitchburg for the use of their sewer lines?
That's correct, it does.
Excellent. He's got all the answers. Any other questions? I don't see any hands, nobody else at the microphone. Declare that we're ready to vote. This is Article 14, 2/3 majority. Voting is now open. Got it. Nailed it. Okay, I think we're stuck at 79. Voting is now closed. Requires 2/3. Oh, we're at 80. Now voting is closed. 72 to 8, 2/3 majority. Article passes. Now watch this. Out of 22 articles totally in the town, we're at Article 14. We're now going to skip 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We're going to go all the way to 21. The beauty of the consent calendar. We've got 2 more articles to go. I bet Mr. Alonso that we'd be here till 12:30, so I hope you can occupy the next hour and 10 minutes. Article 21, Mr. Alonso.
I move that the town vote to authorize the select board on behalf of the town to petition the general court for the enactment of special legislation substantially as printed in the annual town meeting booklet to authorize the town of Lunenburg to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption.
Second.
Seconded. Select Board, your recommendation.
Select board recommend approval 4-0.
Thank you. Finance.
Finance Committee recommends approval 4-1.
4-1. And we'll get to you, Ms. Paticchiola, but I think there are some presentations to be made.
Yes. So
Yes.
the next slide, first as an introduction, Mr. Franco and I worked on this. This has been something that many of us on the board have worked to try to do over the years to find a mechanism to do this. And in the last couple of years, it became available about what other towns were doing, and it was through this special legislation that's before us. We worked on a committee with the Board of Assessors and the assessor and the town manager and the finance director in trying to formulate this and piggybacking much of what is in your booklet from what other towns have done, tailoring it to our own needs here, which we will present now. This amendment, which is, well, we're going to come back to an amendment because there's a mistake in the printing and we'll come back to it. But I will turn the first part of the presentation over to Mr. Franco, if that's okay, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we can do it from here.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, so the purpose of this amendment, article rather, is to provide relief from a portion of their local real property taxes to long-term senior Lunenburg residents meeting certain defined criteria. So as for criteria, which were carefully deliberated over and we arrived at these, applicants must have applied for and been granted the state's senior circuit tax breaker credit. Criteria 2, each applicant at or over age 70 must have applied for and been granted the elderly exemption in Lunenburg under Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41C. 3, each applicant in the application must be 65 years or older, or over 65. The applicants, now let me just make a comment on 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are not inconsistent with one another. So you must be 65 to apply. However, if you are an applicant who is also over the age of 70 or over, you must also meet the criteria 2. So if you're 68, you can apply and you don't need to meet the second criteria. The applicants must have owned and occupied a home in the town of Lunenburg as his or her their primary residence for at least 15 consecutive years, including the date of the application. 5, the applicant has demonstrated to the satisfaction of the Lunenburg Board of Assessors that she or he and each co-applicant owns no other significant assets, such as, by way of non-limiting example, a second home, a trust fund, securities, equities, and bonds. This is something that the assessors are already familiar doing with determining eligibility for other exemptions. So it's there's a little bit of discretion involved, but it's completely consistent with that, and it's nothing new.
Mr. Franco, can we see Article 5? Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you.
And the applicants must apply annually. Mr. Alonso.
So as for the amounts and limitations, the amount of relief granted to each applicant under this program shall not exceed 100% of the state's circuit breaker tax credit for which the applicant qualified the previous year. So there's a governor put in for that, a limit. The Board of Assessors shall annually set the eligible exemption amount, provided, however, that the amount shall not exceed the amount allowed under the circuit breaker income tax credit pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 62, Section 6, Sub K. And the total amount exempted under this act shall not exceed 1% of the townwide real property tax levy. So for this year, for instance, we raised approximately $31 million, so we would not exempt any more than approximately $310,000 from this program or this act. This act is revenue neutral to the town of Lunenburg, so its enactment will not positively nor negatively impact the tax levy calculations or collection. The total amount of exemptions provided pursuant to this act will be shifted to all non-exempt real properties in the town of Lunenburg. A yes vote on this article authorizes the select board to petition the legislature for special legislation, which can take anywhere from 12 to 24 months. Once it's enabled, the last part of the act indicates it may be revoked by a majority vote of any subsequent annual or special town meeting. The reason why we have that in there is there has been talk about the state adopting something of this nature at the state level, and if that would get enacted, the town would have the opportunity to revisit whether we wanted to continue with the local program or did we want to just adopt the state program, and we would be able, without special legislation, to rescind this act. In essence, as it says at the top of the slide, this is a community care act. So the money that we are exempting from the seniors who qualify for this program would basically just be shifted and covered and dispersed over the rest of the non-exempt properties, both residential and commercial and industrial. So whatever amount gets exempted everybody would take a portion of that, and it would be in the neighborhood, depending upon that number, would be anywhere between $20 or $50 per household per year. That would be, an aggregate if we got close to the exact amount of the limit. The reason I want to come back to, and Mr. Moderator, I will officially make this motion. I want to move to amend this article by striking the word residential in the second sentence of section 3. So once amended, that sentence would read that the total amount exempted by this act shall be allocated proportionally within the tax levy on all taxpayers and shall not exceed 1% of the townwide real property tax levy. Thank you. Inadvertently, that residential was added in there when it was the intention of us proposing this act that it would be all properties, not just residential properties would cover the exemption. All industrial and commercial properties would also share in that.
Okay. So the article's been moved, it's been seconded. We can vote on the amendment rather, in a moment, but if people may have other questions in general about the article. Go right ahead. Oh, everybody waits for you, Passios. Oh, she's not waiting on you. Okay.
You want to go
ahead?
No, go ahead. You were standing.
All right, I'm Donna Paticchiola, 132 Hemlock, and I just wanted to offer a few points of clarification because I just went through this. When the pandemic hit, I lost both my jobs, and I went on unemployment, and so I applied for I applied for 41A, and I talked to CJ, and he said, well, for 41A, which is a tax deferral exemption, you can't make more than $20,000. Well, if you add my Social Security and my unemployment, it's more than $20,000, so that's a low threshold. So then CJ said I could apply for 41C, and that says the applicant must have income that does not exceed $31,000 in the calendar year preceding the year of the application. And so I applied for that, but that gives you $750 off your taxes, which, I mean, it helped. I'm grateful, but I think this is I like this better because the amount granted on this one, this was my question. Amount granted in this one says the amount shall not exceed 100% of the circuit breaker. Well, the maximum you can do on circuit breaker is $1,200 at this time. So that's what I was wondering. is the state going to increase the circuit breaker amount to like 2,400? Or is a circuit breaker tax credit going to stay at 1,200, which would be the maximum exemption a senior could get? And,
You've done a lot of research on this, Mr. Alonso. Tell us about the circuit breaker.
I can't offer what the state is going to do on their exemption, whether they will increase it or when they will increase it or to what. But I will say that this tracks with that, so the maximum amount that would be available will track. If they increase that, then the maximum available to be exempted would be, according to the way this is written, would follow that.
Okay, go right ahead, please.
Rhonda Licio, 181 Reservoir Road. I wanted to join the one member of the Finance Committee who voted not to recommended not to approve of this article. My concern is the limited number of seniors who would benefit from the program. It was stated during the hearings that it would be around approximately 50 residents. Voting in favor of this article would essentially take money from the vast majority of seniors who do not qualify for the program, including those who may fall just shy of meeting the criteria, and give it to the limited number of those who do. I do not feel it is my right or that I am in any way qualified to decide and mandate any amount of money to be taken from any household to give to another, especially in this current economy. Why wouldn't we set up a fund to collect voluntary tax deductible donations and possibly include an envelope in our tax bills to help the 50 seniors who would qualify for the program? Charity should be voluntary, not the law of the land. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Debbie Lincoln, 46 Hemlock Drive. Do you have something, Michael, first? Did you want to say something first? Okay.
After you, Ms. Lincoln.
Okay. So I'm also the chairman of the Council on Aging, and I first want to thank Lou and Tom for all their work on this. This is fantastic work. I just want to say, too, that the state of Maine in its entirety has this program. So I think it's something that we should have been looking at for a long time. Thank you for this. We have so many seniors now with this current tax situation that have lived in town for their whole lives and possibly for generations who are having to leave Lunenburg. Anything that we can do for them is wonderful. This is something that we can do now. It's less than a cup of coffee a week for people at the most. Anything we can do is great. Please, please vote for this. This is the least we can do. And if we can do more down the road, great. But this is a great start, and thank you.
Thank you. I think I passed over you, Mr. Justice. Go ahead.
I just want to speak strongly in favor of this article. You know, one of the things that we've talked about on the select board is as a group, we've supported this. And first, I want to thank Mr. Alonso and Mr. Franco for all their hard work working with Karen, Mylene, other members of town staff to really model out a bunch of different scenarios. So what I want to highlight and why I support this is really it's about community. And as a community, you know, everyone within our community is a valuable member. We also have to understand that life changes. And when we look at who is retired in Lunenburg, you know, we have a large percentage of our town that is retired. But when we look at who is retired in Lunenburg, that we know that the cost of homes, you know, all of us are homeowners for the most part. When you look at the cost, the value of your home, what it's done over the last 10 years, for the most part, it's doubled or more, which is great if you plan on selling or doing something else. But if you plan on staying in town, that's really challenging because that means that your taxes have doubled. Now, when you look at income in terms of who was retired, you know, our society had a shift from a single earner household to a dual earner household that occurred in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So we have a lot of retirees who only had one source of income. And so if a spouse, you know, passes away, it becomes a really challenging situation to be in. And when you think about our own loved ones, people who are seniors, it's really not the time to have to leave the community that you've been in, you've committed your life to, you've volunteered in, and then what are the options available to you? So if you can't afford to live in Lunenburg at 75 or 80 years old and you're still going strong, what's the option? Are you going to move to Fitchburg or Worcester, a place that you didn't grow up in, a place that you haven't contributed to? So, the way that just the market works, it naturally forces out a lot of people, and unfortunately, those people are retirees. What this does is it says to those members of our community who've lived here, who've contributed here, and it says, in your most vulnerable years, we will come together as a community, as you have supported us, and we will support you. And this, to me, is a reasonable, balanced, fair approach. I think that as time goes on, we may have opportunities to modify this in some kind of way, so that way we're increasing the amount of people that are captured by this program. But certainly, this is a step in the right direction. That, all of us who aren't retirees, I'm 20-something years away, well, probably 15 from AARP telling me I'm a senior, but, I'm I'm about 20-something years or so away from this, even being eligible. But I know that I want to live in Lunenburg till my last breath. And so something like this enables all of us to continue to, again, support our community. I urge your vote for this. I know that, I wish we could do more. I always wish we could do more, but this is a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Sir?
Yes, my name is Clark Knudsen, 487 Holman Street. I just wanted to raise the idea that previous speaker person who mentioned, make it a voluntary program to contribute. I fully appreciate the idea and the intent of helping those who have need and helping them out. My concern is when you make it mandatory, it becomes like you're stealing from me to give to somebody else. Let the people spend the money how they would like to spend it. I would love for this to be a voluntary program where you can contribute what you like. When you start pulling out for me, how is that necessarily fair to everyone else? I will say this. I moved here cross country 3 years ago, and everyone talked about how great Lunenburg was. And when I mentioned that the property taxes are a whole lot higher than what I was accustomed to across the country, I was effectively told to shut up and suck it. Yeah, I was told to shut up, and that the services here are great and you pay for what you get. And so if we want to spend less, if we want to collect less money, let's spend less money. So to me, the idea is if somebody needs help, let's talk, let's be communal about it, but let's not try to force everyone to have to pay for someone else along the way. And that right there, and I was also told, or I shouldn't say I was told, I remember attending some of these all-town meetings where it was voiced by the members of the select board that if you're not getting your 2.5% increase at work a year, you should leave. If people really feel they can't afford Lunenburg, maybe they should have to leave. By the way this is written, if I recall, it says that you have to be a member of Lunenburg for at least 15 years. So for people who are only here 12, 13, do they not qualify as well? Again, I would much prefer, me as my citizen, my vote, I would say make it an absolute voluntary program and let it be there. Let the gratitude, generosity of fellow people from Lunenburg contribute to that fund and let it be done. So those are my words.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jeffries, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment on that to the last speaker is, when we look at, I want to talk about schools for a moment. And what I want to say is, can we imagine a situation in which all of us who do not have kids in the school system, we say, well, if you want to contribute to the schools, contribute. But if you don't want to contribute, then you don't have to. And so then what you're left with is all the families who have a child. It's about $13-something thousand per year to educate a kid. And so then we go to those families and say, well, here's a $13,000 tax. Oh, you had 2 kids? How about $26,000 for, 3 kids? $39,000, $40,000 from you. And I think part of what community is I'm not saying it's a redistribution of wealth, and I don't believe that at all. But a community is all of us coming together to look at what all of our resources are and how we can best apply them to meet all of our generalized needs. And in a town where literally, 1/4% of our budget goes towards senior-specific services, and this is a population that's almost a third of our town, but 1/4% goes towards senior services. So what this does is it bumps it up to 1.25%. You know, I don't believe that that's an unreasonable ask, given that, again, the whole purpose of community is working together. Not everyone uses the fire department. Not everyone, some people live on private roads. Some people have their own trash services in town. Some people have wells, some people don't. That there's a lot of different services that people do not utilize. But what's important is that we're being mindful of all of our members of the community, everyone who's contributing to that tax base. Again, 52% of our budget roughly is schools. But not 52% of the town does not have a kid in the school system. Does that mean we stop supporting the schools? Of course it doesn't mean we stop supporting the school system. And so I understand the argument. I just, as my counter to that, to the previous speaker, I'd say, these are the hard decisions we have to make as a community all the time. And I urge, again, us to be mindful. 1/4% of our budget goes towards 1/3 of our population. We need to be better than that.
Thank you. I know I've got two members of the select board that want to speak, but I'm going to address the two people at the microphone, but I will come back to you. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Oops. Kim Thomas, 183 Hemlock Drive. And I have a question and then I want to make a comment. Are we going to strike the word residential before we vote? Or
we're going to vote on the amendment and then we're going to vote on the article.
Is there a reason for that? Because that makes a difference.
Well, that's the procedural process. Okay. Moving party has also moved to amend. You can accept the amendment, decline the amendment, and then we'll vote on the article either as it was written or as amended.
Okay. And as to what the gentleman who preceded me commented, I think he basically summed up my feelings about it. I'm 71 years old. I've lived in Lunenburg for over 20 years. I'm still working because I can't afford not to, especially now that living on the lake. I just had a huge increase in my taxes. But I feel like if we can't, I'll probably never be able to get this senior tax relief. I'll probably be working till the day I die. But if we can't, as a community, support those who are elderly, there's something really sad about our community. The idea that my husband and I have talked about moving because we can't afford the taxes. But as you said, less than 1% to help the elderly in our town, it's just the right thing to do.
Thank you. Over here.
Terry Birchfield, I still live at Rose Garden Lane. And basically, I just have a question in terms of the revenue sourcing of this and whether or not it's possible, looking down the road. I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's definitely, when you see people on limited incomes trying to manage where they are, it's important that if we can help, we do help. But I also wonder if it's possible that some of the revenue sourcing of this could somehow be tied to, when properties are taxed at an agricultural level, then that's going to be different than regular tax rate. And I'm just also wondering if there's a way to, if someone is benefiting from lower taxes, that at the sale of the property down the road, that somehow that comes out of a certain classification, and those monies that were afforded the person who owned the home comes back to the town as a liability on the sale of the, so that basically if the, and again, I'm assuming that people aren't selling, that basically they're going to be in the house till your last breath. You're the only one in the home. The house is now taken out of a special tax situation, and again, just so that it doesn't have to fall to necessarily someone who's 40 years old and would potentially be in a situation where they lost their job and could just as equally benefit from some source of assistance. But anyway, I'm just saying that basically it'd be tied to the property just to, so that over time, if the state does go up to 2,400, and so that, will that double the amount of money that's going to have to be available in that account, and will that, what impact will that have on everybody else in town? That's all. There was just basically a, is that something that can be looked into?
Can I answer some of those? That was
We're going to let Mr. Alonso go. You packed a lot in there, Ms. Birchfield.
Let's work backwards. In the case the state increases it, that's why we put the 1% limit. So there will be always a limit of 1% of what the proposed levy will be for any year. So that's covered. As far as other mechanisms that may be available, I am sure there are others. We chose ones that already have been put in place and have passed the special legislation already, not to complicate things and not to make things so complex that makes the accounting for the accounting department very, very difficult, or the assessor's department very difficult. We went with criteria that were easy to understand. Are there other mechanisms potentially out there? We could look at them, but we didn't go into those because they get into a complex level of complexity that we don't know that the legislature would pass, number one, and may be very difficult in the accounting processes to administer.
Oh, I was going to do it on the screen if you can. Sorry, conducting a little business. Mr. Franco, you're next, and then I'll get over you, sir, and I will get back to it, I promise.
Okay, I appreciate all the comments that have been made so far, but I'm obviously arguing in favor of this. I've been working on it for 18 months. So we arrived at these criteria and created this proposed piece of legislation after very careful modeling and consideration of various factors. I'll address some of what was brought up. Why 15 years? I mean, what about somebody that's been here 12 years or 13 years? Well, they'll be eligible in 2 or 3 years. But, I mean, we had to cut this off somewhere. We had to, we talked about 10 years. We thought that that would open the floodgates and we would just have too many applicants. And even knowing there is a cutoff at the 1% levy, the watering down of the potential pool of relief, we didn't want to go in that direction. We thought 20 years was too long. We thought 15 years was a sufficient commitment to the town that you've been here, you've been paying taxes, you've contributed presumably in other ways to the town. So it was a compromise, 15 years, and we thought it was a good one. Secondly, we're not imposing this by dictatorial fiat. We're asking that it be democratically enacted. So people are participating in a government, and like everything else, things that pass by majority, some people like them and some people don't. But we're asking that this be democratically enacted, not enacted under some totalitarian regime. I would also say that the likelihood and reality of this hitting 1% based on the known number of applicants for the current forms of relief, the likelihood of this actually hitting 1% of the levy is pretty low. I would be shocked if it does that, but that's a cap. That's a cap on the aggregate, and it's there for the protection of making sure that really nobody, the other taxpayers to whom this cost is being defrayed, never see an increase in their tax bills of more than 1%. So if we did hit that levy of that limit of 1%, on the average tax bill is about $6,400. You are talking $64 a year if we hit that much. I mean, like I think Mrs. Lincoln said, $1 a week, a little bit more than $1 a week. And also, as for subsidizing certain segments of the population, that happens all the time. It happens on a national level, a state level. When there are nonprofits, 501c3s, that when they have tax exempt status. Now that money has to come from somewhere. The federal government still has to raise a certain amount of revenue. You're subsidizing. That's a subsidy for various nonprofit causes that you may never be touched by, you may never benefit from, and included in that is churches, actually. So by giving tax exempt status to 501 to nonprofits, you are subsidizing them. total strangers across the country. You're subsidizing stuff in LA. We're asking you to come together as a community and support your neighbors. I mean, what could be better and more direct than that? And thank you. That's what we're asking for.
Thank you. Sir?
John Trainer, 105 Horizon Island Road. I think this article is a great idea, and I'm going to vote for it. But I don't really think it addresses the problem, and I don't think the problem's going to go away. It's going to help a very, very small group of people. There's kind of a perfect storm that Mr. Jeffries mentioned, that over 10 years, maybe home values have doubled. Maybe your property taxes have doubled. And there's going to be an awful lot of people, like a couple of the young ladies that spoke earlier, that fall between the cracks. They make too much. It doesn't really solve the problem. I mean, I think we need to start, and I know it's a bit of a nightmare, but to think about something like they have in California with Proposition 13, where your taxes can't go up to reflect the real value of your home until you sell it and the market is reset on that property. And that way, people that are in homes, the value kind of stays the same. It goes up 2.5% a year until they sell. And then if there's a big windfall profit, the new owner pays the new tax rate because they were willing to buy the house for that amount of money. Then that solves the problem. People don't get taxed out of their homes. It's not just the people that are real low income and qualify this. I think that's only going to be 25 people a year, 50 people a year in town. So I think we're going to need to think a little deeper to try to solve this problem than just this one great idea. It's a great idea. I'll vote for it.
Thank you.
Just reiterating a couple things. So one, I believe Mr. Jeffries' point of why don't we defund the schools, I believe that's actually federally required as federal law. So that's why I believe we need to fund schools, number one. Two, as for 501c things, it's a lot different in my mind to say the indirect expense of not taxing someone in LA for their contributions to raise a fund to be used for public good versus directly taking money from my taxes. That's one other thing. I doubt anyone's going to change their mind, so I'm going to move that we at least vote on the amendment. And then if we can follow that up, I'll wait here so we can then move to vote on the article.
Right, perfect. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
I just, Donna Paticilla from Hemlock Drive. I just was curious where the current exemptions we have, they're like $750. Where's that money coming from currently?
Yeah, the Commonwealth. She's asked about where the money, the current exemptions come from to fund the...
Collectively, I got you got the answer, right?
The money for the exemptions that are granted now is what comes from the overlay accounts on an annual basis. So you are granted the exemptions, it's charged from an overlay account, and we receive a percentage reimbursement on those exemptions from the state.
Just Donna, a follow-up to his questions, why couldn't we continue to do it that way so that it could be voted for? No? That would make you happy.
I don't know that I 100% understand the question, but in order to enact this act, we would still have to pass something at this meeting, and because of the authority we're asking, I think it needs to be special legislation under the other exemptions are adopted Mass General Law chapters that we've adopted or their state programs, so they already have authorization. You still have to get authorization to do this.
You're up out of your seat. Go right ahead.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I move the question on the amendment.
On the amendment.
I second.
Okay, excellent. Kathy's been calling for that in my ear for quite some time. So on the amendment, Mr. Alonso, if you can explain the amendment again, and we're going to vote first on the amendment.
The amendment, which is to remove the word residential from that section in Section 3, is to remove it so that any exempted amounts because of this act would be redistributed to all of the taxpayers in town, not just residential taxpayers, as it says in the warrant. It would go to residential, industrial, and commercial, and all forms of taxpayers in town.
Okay. Question's been moved. It's not debated. So just wanted Mr. Alonso to explain it. So the wizard behind the screen has put it up for the amendment. Amend Article 21. We're going to vote on this first, just the amendment, but strike the word residential in the second sentence of Section 3. All those in favor of striking that word, voting is now open. Yes to strike, no not to strike. Uh-oh. 71.0. Who's a .0? It's a point. There's no halves, so don't worry about that. Okay. I think it's frozen at this point in time. Oh, people still thinking. All right, I'm declared that the voting is now closed. All those in favor of striking the word residential, 74, against 9, 74.0, 9.0. So the word strike from residential is stricken. Now we're on to the article on its entirety. Mr. Alonso.
I just wanted to have a comment about some of the speakers. So to some of the points, to the previous speaker who said that we could do more at the state level and enact what California has adopted, I couldn't agree more. I've been very vocal with our state legislature to try to do that. I think I've always said this should be done at the state level, because you can basically increase the pool of people who you could benefit, and in a much more significant way. So I would ask people to, if you ever speak to you or write to your state legislators at the representative or senator level, please do that. To those people who say, well, we could do this by volunteer donations, I would say these two are not mutually exclusive. If you want to do that and you have a petition to put that in, I'd be the first to sign it. Any way we can help people in need, I think, is useful. So it's not one or the other. But the last most important point, why I said this is a Community Care Act, is ask yourself, what kind of community do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a place that has houses where people don't know their neighbors, don't care about their neighbors, don't care about people across town? Or do you want to create a supportive net of connections between people, where what happens to other people in town, possibly in a way that is unquantifiable, affects you and affects the way of living and the quality of life in your town and neighboring towns? That's the community I'd like to live in. And we're not, as Mr. Franco said, this is not being done by the board or one person or the town manager. We're asking you as a town, what kind of community do you want to live in? And this is an act to support people who are in need. It has a limited amount of applicants who will be able to qualify, but you know what? We can look to increase it later on, but let's start somewhere, and let's help the people most in need stay in a community that, by their criteria, they've contributed to, they've lived in, raised their family in. So I couldn't urge a stronger support vote for this act.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead, Mr. Franco.
Yeah, I just want to add some more thoughts, too. I mean, nothing is perfect, right? We are presenting a package to you, a package that has been very carefully thought about, deliberated, modeled, and crafted to present to you. Of course, there may be suggestions and ways to make it better. I'm not pointing to anybody in particular, but the philosophy, for example, that, well, we shouldn't help 45 people because this won't help 90. Well, nobody said that specifically, but they conveyed that kind of idea. We have to start somewhere, and let's help who we can. And if we've set up bars so that we identify the people truly in need, because we're requiring that they go through the paces of having exhausted and applied for all other available forms of relief as a prerequisite to applying for this one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Waters, and the designated mover is already at the microphone.
Just to follow up on the previous two speakers, to say that this is not enough is sort of inaccurate. I think what's not enough is where we currently sit. This is something, this is progress towards something, and we can always revisit it. We can work on it later in the future. But to say that we're not doing enough is where we currently are. So the article presented is to start doing something. As far as the taking from me to give to others argument, I understand it's difficult to accept, removing or increasing someone's taxes in order to cover someone else's living expenses or their taxes as well. But the difference here is that we're talking about a small amount of money, $25, $50 per year versus upwards of $1,200 per year for someone else who has been in the town and has contributed taxes for 15 years plus. So I think it's sort of they've bought into this program, they want to live here, there's no reason they want to move, and the idea that we're forcing them out simply because we don't want to pay an extra $25 per year, $64 per year, I believe was the worst case scenario, or the average scenario, is just sort of ignoring our community and our neighbors. So again, I fully support this amendment, or this article, and I urge everyone else to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Arshemba, I'm going to save you. We're ready to vote. Okay? We don't need to move the... Thank you. Okay, great. All right, so Article 21 is before you. Voting is now open. All those in favor of Article 21 will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no. We still have the point zeros up there. As amended. Thank you. As amended. Thank you, Kathy. Article 21 as amended. Looks like everybody has voted. I'm going to close the voting now and tell me what the results are. Wizard of Oz behind the screen. 77 in favor, 11 opposed. Mr. Alonso, we're closing in on 12:30. Mr. Bernie, keep it going for a half an hour. That was my vote. Article 22, Mr. Jeffries, move the article.
I move that the town vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Section 250-4.1, which is a section of the protective bylaw entitled Permitted and Prohibited Uses, by adding a new section, 250-4.1K, 20, entitled Self-Storage, and inserting the same into the accompanying use table as shown in the annual town meeting booklet.
Second.
Thank you. Select Board, your recommendation.
Select Board recommends approval unanimously.
Finance.
Finance Committee finds no direct financial impact.
This is on page 12, folks, in your warrant.
Planning Board recommends 4-0.
4-0. Thank you, Mr. Bernie, for reminding me of that. And tell us about the article. Talk slowly. I got to get till 12:30.
I don't even know if I can pull this one out that far. So earlier this year, a resident approached the Planning Board requesting that self-storage be added to the use table. I think everybody can envision what self-storage is in their mind. Up on the screen is what we're proposing to codify as the definition. In 2017, the town did a rewrite of the zoning to introduce the use table. At the time, we went through all of the uses that were expressly outlined in the zoning bylaw and included them in the use table, and also proposed some other uses that were more contemporary that were not included but were something that came up regularly. At the time, self-storage was not a listed use and was not something that the board had at the front of their mind. An existing self-storage does exist. It was permitted under the previous bylaws and was allowed as a use similar to other uses determined by the building commissioner. So in the interceding years between then and now, several people have come in and inquired about self-storage but have not wanted to pursue discussing it with the planning board. This individual did. The board felt that it was a reasonable definition to include, and they felt that the commercial industrial districts outlined in the pinky color and the gray colors were reasonable places to locate a self-storage use, and they felt that a special permit through the zoning board would be the most appropriate way to do that. Special permits are a subjective permitting process where the zoning board looks at the individual parcel, the surrounding parcels, the use that's outlined, and makes a determination on the proposal in front of them and how it will fit into the neighborhood and whether or not there will be potential negative effects and ways that they can or might mitigate those on each individual proposal.
Thank you. Anyone at the microphone want to store their belongings? Oh, Kathy says we're ready to vote. I don't see anybody else up. 2/3, right? Thank you, Mr. Costa. Okay, voting is now open. If you're in favor of the amending the code. Don't forget, we have town election coming up on the 20th. Polls open at 7 o'clock at the TC Passios. Absentee ballots are available at Kathy's office. Drop by the house or someplace. No, I guess just the office. We've had a few people leave, but we do still have 74 people. Tell all your friends and neighbors the meeting got over early enough that they can come next time. Okay, I'm going to declare that the voting is now closed. All those in favor, 66 in favor, 8 opposed. The article passes by 2/3. Thank you all for coming. We have reached the end and we are concluded. Mr. Alonso, I think you win. It was closer to noon than 12:30. I didn't hear you say anything.